Charleston County Board of Zoning and Appeals, also known as the BZA. The board members that will hear your case tonight are, to my right, we have Mr. Jordan, Mr. Marchant, Sadell, and Mr. Neal. Mr. Neal. And to my left, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Truslow, Mr. Williams. And our attorney, we have Mr. Mark Bell. Our staff members that we have present tonight is Ms. Clark, Mr. Downey, Ms. Stiles, and Ms. Working. Because the hearing tonight is a public fact-finding meeting, we are in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act and South Carolina Code 6-29-70. 15 days prior to the hearing, an announcement was printed in the Post and Courier. A sign was posted on or near the designated property, and a notice was mailed to the applicant or the applicant's representative, to the property owners within 300 feet of the property, and to parties of interest. Persons, organizations, news media have requested declarations of our meeting and have also been notified. Board members, the meeting notes from May 1st were mailed to you. Are there any changes? If so, can I have a motion to approve in a second?
Approval. Second.
All right, I got a motion.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? It carries. Thank you. Our case rulings from this and any BZA meeting are available to the public and inspection during normal business hours at the Charleston County Zoning and Planning Department. The Board of Zoning and Appeals is a quasi-judicial body and has final decision-making authority on the following: appeals of a zoning-related administration decision. The BZA is authorized to hear and decide appeals only on zoning-related matters where it is alleged that an error in the order, requirement, decision, or determination made by the administrative official in the administration or the enforcement of any zoning-related regulations. A 2/3 vote of the quorum present is required to overturn the decision of the planning director in an appeal. We also have a special exception. A special exception is an exception issued by the BZA authorizing a particular use in a specified location within the zoning district. Upon demonstrating such a use complies with the conditions and standards specified in the Zoning and Land Development Regulation Ordinance, also known as ZELDAR. The BZA must find that the special exception meets all 6 of the approval criteria in the ordinance in order to grant a special exception. A simple majority is required for the special exception. And then we have a variance. A variance is a relaxation of the BZA's regulations of the ordinance where such action will be not contrary to the public interest and where, to conditions particular to the property and not the result of the actions or the situation of the applicant, a literal enforcement of the code will result in the unnecessary and undue hardship, and such variance is consistent with Section 6-29-800 of the Code of the State of South Carolina, Title 6, Chapter 29. The BZA must find that the variance meets all of the 7 approval criteria of the ordinance in order to grant the variance, and a simple majority is required. Our purpose tonight is for interested parties to be heard in order for us to assist the board in gathering evidence pertinent to each case. If a member of the BZA feels a need for further information to clarify a case, the board has the authority to subpoena witnesses. It is understood that the rules of your neighborhood or subdivision are binding and that we can take no action to negate their jurisdiction over your property. In addition to your testimony, our board has been presented written information submitted by staff, by the applicant, or the applicant's agent for each case. This information is now considered to be evidence and is entered into this permanent record of this body. It is assumed that it is complete, true, and accurate. In addition, we have been presented data assembled by the staff for the purpose of clarifying the location and the applicant's effect on the surrounding properties. Our board is empowered to approve with conditions, or to deny a special exception or a variance request. We're also authorized to defer a case should there be a need to obtain additional information. The BZA's final decision will be mailed within 10 working days of this public hearing. It will be certified mail to the applicant, and U.S. mail to the neighbors and the community interest that is listed. If an applicant's request is approved, the applicant should contact the Charleston County Zoning and Planning Department staff to discuss the next steps in the variance process or special exception process. Variance and special exceptions granted this evening are valid for 12 months after the meeting. A one-year extension may be granted only if construction or development has been commenced or is being diligently pursued. However, an applicant's request is disapproved and the applicant wishes to appeal the decision of the board concerning the case, an appeal must be addressed to the circuit court. South Carolina Code 6-29-820 states that an appeal must be filed by the applicant within 30 days after the decision of this board. Failure to file an appeal within the time limit deprives this court of jurisdiction to hear the matter. Because this is a quasi-judicial body, everything in this meeting must be complete, true, and accurate. All of the information provided to the BZA is considered evidence, and this board may certify contempt of circuit court if false testimony is made either in writing or orally. Each person wishes to speak to the board will be asked to be sworn by the BZA secretary before providing testimony or evidence. In order to expedite this procedure, those wishing to speak to this body, I would ask that you now please stand, raise your right hand as a group, and Ms. Workin will administer the oath.
Please stand and raise your right hand. I will say the oath and you will say, I do. I swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. I do. I do. Thank you.
That looks like about everybody. That's pretty good. I will now call each case by case number. The staff will present facts pertinent to each case limited to 5 minutes. I will then call the applicant. The applicant will stand and state his or her name and the current address for the record before presenting testimony that's pertinent to each case, limited to 5 minutes. I will then ask for those speaking either in support or opposition to the case, and they will follow the same procedure for identifying themselves, and they are limited to 2 minutes. The applicant will then have a chance to reply to any opposition, limited to 2 minutes. And then the BZA will make a motion to close the case to the public. Finally, the BZA will make a motion concerning the application stating specific facts of finding and conclusion of law. Tonight, we'll hear 5 cases, new cases. Ms. Workin, would you please start off with case BZA 04-23-00666.
Hi, yes. In your supplemental packet you received on Friday, the applicant is requesting a deferral because they're trying to find another representative, a legal representative. And so I can't schedule them for July, but I could schedule them for August. Or if you could just defer it for up to the 90 days, and staff will handle the scheduling.
Well, that makes it easy. Okay. So we have, board members, we have a request to defer this first case. Can I get a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to defer the case for up to 90 days.
Yep.
Second. And then Mr. Marchant making a second. Any questions? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It carries. Thank you, Ms. Working. Okay. So our next case will be BZA 04-23-00667.
Okay. The applicant and property owner, Daniel McClam of Hawks Real Estate Belgrade LLC, is requesting a variance to waive the requirement that pedestrian sidewalks shall extend the length of the entire property at the right-of-way frontage line, and variance request to retain the existing roll-up doors that face the front of the road at 1815 Belgrade Avenue, which is TMS number 35001000017 in the St. Andrews area of Charleston County. The subject property and adjacent properties to the north, east, and west are located in the DuPont Wapu Area Overlay Job Center zoning district. The adjacent property to the south is located in the DuPont Wapu Area Overlay General Office zoning district. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. The 0.55 acre property contains an existing 9,253 square foot, one-story metal building. The applicant is currently in the site plan review process for the proposed manufacturing production use. The previous property owner did not have an active business license for the last 3 years. This is the zoning ordinance requirements for what they are requesting and the overlay map. Here's an aerial map, another zoomed in and zoomed out aerial map. And we conducted our site visit on May 9th, 2023. Subject property, surrounding properties in Belgrade. This is the site plan again. And this is the elevation showing you the two doors and the plat. Staff stated that the request may meet 1, 4, and 6, and that it meets 2, 3, 5, and 7. And the board may approve with conditions, or deny the case based on the BZA's findings of fact, unless additional information is deemed necessary. If you choose to approve the case, staff has one suggested condition that the applicant shall complete the site plan review process and obtain all applicable required permits and licenses to establish the manufacturing production use. Have any questions?
Does any board member have a question for staff at this time? Yes, sir.
Obviously being new here on some of this county stuff, sidewalks are big where I come from. I'm trying to understand why the site plan would not be done and completed before they would ask for their variance. Because, I mean, I would think that's a lot of the details that we need. Or is this something that's already been approved before? Is there any history of sidewalks not being prominent in this area?
Well, we get the site plan close to an approval state as we can, and then the applicant chooses then, if they're not complying with something like the sidewalk requirement, to ask for the variance. Of course, if that isn't approved tonight, then the site plan will change.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, sir. Mr. Marchant.
Ms. Working, it looks like there are no sidewalks on either side of the property or on either side of the street, right?
Right.
So the entire Belgrade Avenue is void of any sidewalk, correct?
Correct.
So, I mean, what's the position of the county when something like that happens? It's kind of like building a bridge over no water, right? Or is there ever a situation where if the county were to install a sidewalk, the property owner could pay into a fund to fund that portion of the sidewalk that would be on their property in the future? I mean, I'm trying to make some sense out of why have a sidewalk that's, I don't know, 100 feet long where there's no other sidewalk.
Yeah, I mean, the county has plans for sidewalks in this area, not necessarily the street. And it is in the SCDOT right away, so we'd have to work closely with them. I think if SCDOT were to allow it, they'd want the county to maintain it. So,
We've done that before.
about
Mr.
the fund
Marchant.
thing. Do you know, Jennifer, about like setting aside funds? Not sure about that.
I'm asking because is that something the board could consider as a provision as we go through the process?
I'm not familiar with funds being set aside, but as Jenny said, it would go first into the DOT right-of-way. If DOT denies it, then we ask them to provide it on the parcel. And in this case, the applicant doesn't want to do that either, so they're asking for a variance.
Right, okay, thank you.
I have a question about the garage door, if I can. So, Ms. Working, there's existing doors on this building. What's the variance they're asking for concerning garage doors?
Well, it's not allowed to be shown from the right-of-way, and they were installed prior to permitting.
I see. Okay, thank you.
It's a after-the-fact
I see.
variance.
All right, thanks.
I have a question.
Okay.
Ms. Working, do you know if a request was made to the DOT specifically to put the sidewalk in the right-of-way?
I know that they inquired to the DOT. I don't know if there was a formal request.
Okay.
But the applicant should be able to answer.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Anyone else? Very good. Is the applicant present today? Very good. If you would, please state your name and address, and please tell us why we should approve your application.
Sure.
I greatly appreciate it. And before we start, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, we won't be looking back at these screens behind us. We have screens in front of us, so don't think that we're not paying attention. We have screens down front.
Good point.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, please.
Daniel McClam. I'm Mark McClam. I'm his dad. We're partners in this project together. 549 Jacobs Mill Pond Road, Columbia, South Carolina, 29045 is where I live. First off, thanks everybody for being here. Really appreciate you allowing us to present our case. And I want to also thank Jenny and Jennifer and their staff for their guidance and knowledge in navigating this process to get here. So you guys were awesome helping us. First off, I think it's pretty well known that this was a 44-year existing warehouse that was owned by the Weeks family. Unfortunately, they didn't get a business license that lapsed the last 3 years. It's moved us from a 44-year existing structure into a new construction code requirements. Before I jump into it, one of you asked a couple questions. I want to back into how the permitting happened and what happened. We bought the building in April of 2022. We quickly made some improvements to the building, painting the inside and the outside, upgrade bathroom, lighting, roofing, redid the parking lot, sealed, striped, handicap ramps, landscaping, and we did the roll-up doors. We hired a local general contractor who specializes in warehouses here in the local area. Unfortunately, without our knowledge, he didn't pull a permit. And quite frankly, that's very upsetting to us. If he'd pulled a permit in May, we would have known that the guy before us didn't have a license. And we would have gone immediately to Jennifer and the BZA or the zoning board asking for permission for this. Unfortunately, because we didn't know this, he didn't pull a permit. We then went down the road with many different tenants looking to lease the building. We located one we liked, which was AAA Corporate. Unfortunately, they're a big group, back and forth for a couple months with their attorneys. Finally, in the November-December timeframe, we came to a resolution with them. They went to pull a business license. In November-December, upon pulling a business license, found out that the quandary that we ended up being in, that the previous owner didn't pull a business license, and we moved from an existing structure to new construction. We've done zero to the building as far as the footprint. We've not changed anything to the building, nothing to the lot outside the building. One thing for reference, over the course of the last year, we've had 51 inquiries from different tenants, which all 51 required roll-up doors to have a functional warehouse. As you all know, this Belgrave district is a warehouse district. We sent pictures of all the roll-up doors. You've seen all those. There's many of these warehouses that are facing the street with roll-up doors. And again, it is a warehouse district. The building footprint, if we could change the doors, we would. There's no room on the side of the building to put roll-up doors. The footprint of the back of the building butts up to the property line. There's no way to put doors there. The only location is the front of the building. I will tell you that Daniel went to 28 of the property owners up and down the street. So we have 28 signatures from other property owners that are in favor of both variants, both the roll-up door and the sidewalk. 3 of those were actually residential owners as well. That represents 75% of all the property owners on Belgrave that are in favor of our 2 variances. As I said, it moved us to a new construction. I do want you to know that we've tried to comply with all the code requirements that have been set forth in front of us. First one was reduce the driveway from 40 feet to 30 feet. The second one was redo the landscape buffers, setbacks, new plants, new trees, move the landscape completely back, tear down a 6-foot fence. And actually these code requirements reduce the parking lot, which was already pretty small for a 9,200 square foot building. This also reduced our existing parking from 13 spaces to 8 spacing, creating a bit of a parking hardship based on a 7,200 square foot building and the uses needed. All those are shown on our engineering drawings. So we've pretty much gone from 13 spaces to 8, and the roll-up doors are desperately needed to be a functional warehouse in the future. Any questions on that I can help?
Does any board member have a question of the applicant? No. Okay.
Is that,
Well,
is that a good thing? I'm just kidding.
Thank you for not allowing me to answer that. Thank you. All right. Do we have anyone else to speak in favor of this application?
Daniel's going to cover the sidewalk piece, if that's okay. We've got 2 variances, unless you're breaking
Well,
them separately.
no, you just get an opportunity. You got your time. Go ahead.
Hey,
Please
yo,
state your name and address, please.
I appreciate it. Daniel McClam. I live at 13 Charlestown Road, 29403 or 7. 3 is downtown, 7 West Ashley. Starting point, I guess, I graduated from College of Charleston. My dad graduated from College of Charleston. I've been living in West Ashley for about 5 years. I worked for Avis Young as an industrial broker for 3 years on Ashley River Road, and I live right by the Greenway. I'm more than familiar with Belgrade Avenue. Live right around the corner. I'll be talking about the sidewalk portion of the variance, but as far as connectability goes, I'm all for that as well. I live right next to the Greenway. I'm on it 3 or 4 times a week. I think if we could do it, we would, just like we have the rest of the code requirements that were placed in front of us. But there are certain property-specific implications and also some macro implications that we've faced and that I'd like to touch on quickly, if I can. So, like my dad said, initially we were at 13. We're already down to 8 due to setbacks, landscape buffers, et cetera, and just going through the engineering process, which we didn't plan on doing. I can tell you from representing over 100 industrial tenants over the last 3 years that 8 parking spaces for a 9,200 square foot facility is saying it's underserved is probably an understatement. It's definitely an uphill battle. So we have already reduced to 8. At this point, per the code, the sidewalk must run along the front of the property and also must connect to the front door of the building. We have made attempts to get a full done site engineer plan done, but with some other stuff that I'll talk about in a second has been a real challenge for us. But we do have some drawings that I'm happy to provide of what that looks like. But all in all, it's pretty clear cut that we lose about 2 spaces if you're looking at the site plan on the right side of our parking lot, which would bring us to about 6 spaces, about 5 non-handicap spaces, which, there's for a 9,200 square foot facility, that is not a lot. So right now, I don't think I need to get into as much information as I thought I did at first because, most of it is all highlighted in the packet that, we took a long time to address. But, I will say, just as far as the use goes for us and the parking hardships that we're facing, in the job center district, there are about 50 total uses that work for a user. And out of that 50, there are industrial, retail, office-oriented uses in there. When you kind of narrow down what would work for a warehouse, there's not a single one based on 8 spaces that will work based on the parking requirements. And that's solely for ones that are that the parking requirements are based on square footage. So I'm sorry if that was a little bit confusing, but what we narrowed it down to is essentially we have about less than 10% of users that can utilize the building with 8 spaces. So safe to say, I just don't know how the site functions or what utility we have with 6 spaces or less. On top of that, I'll kind of speed it up here, but per the code, obviously the sidewalk runs along the frontage. We have in our public right-of-way, if you look at the site plan, the top left corner, we have a telephone power pole, telecommunications box, a fiber optics box, a sewer manhole, a catch basin, and then we have another catch basin nearby actually on our property. In going through the engineering process, speaking with general contractors, it's very clear that we would have to relocate or restructure just about all of these, which aren't even on our property. So we're not developers. We got into this and we didn't plan to redevelop the whole property or anything along those lines. So we were leaning on engineers and general contractors, which would require apparently, coordination, design, approval from Commission on Public Works, SE&G, fiber optics companies, AT&T, you name it, sewer water departments, all of which, I don't know how much that costs or how much it is, but essentially, timeline-wise, looking at 6 months to a year to get that all facilitated. DOT didn't recommend it, and so I understand I'm coming up on time, but happy to answer any questions on that.
Let me help you.
Okay.
Do you have those drawings?
I have some preliminary designs from.
Do you have them with you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can we see them?
Absolutely. Yeah, I printed 10 of them, so yeah.
You also mentioned in your testimony that there would be just a few vendors that would be able to utilize your facility, correct?
Could you repeat that question? I apologize.
If you give it to one of the staff members there, please. Thank you. You'd had very few vendors or companies that could utilize your facility with so few parking spots, correct?
Absolutely at this point. Yes, sir.
Can you tell me who could use it?
Based one for sure is manufacturing and production. A user we've identified because it's 1 space per 2 employees, which is a rare parking requirement in job center or in maybe all of Charleston County, but manufacturing production, the only other 1 spot for 2 parking spaces, there's 2 of them. One is a repair facility and another one is some sort of civic organization, which it wouldn't make sense for 9,200 square feet, but it's those are 3 identified, and then some other repair type facility. But even so, they're based on number of employees. And so when you think about, I would lease spaces 2,000 square feet that had 8 employees, for a 9,200 square foot facility. If someone wants to maximize what they're doing in there, they're more than likely going to have a lot of employees. And I have all that code kind of highlighted and whatnot, but it's.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Mr. Marchant.
Just so I'm clear on the parking, I think I am, but per code, you meet requirements for the zone or building use, right? Per code, you're okay. But for use, you're limited because typically you'd want more parking to accommodate a variety of potential tenants for manufacturing industrial warehouse. Is that correct? I mean, is that basically what you're saying?
That's a correct assessment. However, our user does need 8.
Right. Got that. So the hardship there is that adding a sidewalk takes away 2 of your spaces, which creates even more of a limited amount of tenants that you could potentially attract to a building that would typically have more parking because of its use, especially in the district that it's in. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thanks.
And a typical new development, I'll add, I mean, when we're, looking at a property, you're typically putting a 10,000 square foot facility on a 1 acre usable developable parcel. So we're at half that simply because it was developed in 1980.
Yes, sir. Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is really on the sidewalk. I don't have a problem with potential losing the sidewalk. The eight spots is fine with me, especially nowadays with Uber and things like that. But the question I have is, if this county does get funding somehow for sidewalks in that area, in their master plan, Ms. Working said is out there, is there some scenario that the ownership group can come up with that they would be okay with, that this council could approve or put in their motion for approval? I don't have really an opinion on the roll-up doors. I'll be moving forward with that, but I'm asking them if they can have some type of solution. But if that's not right, maybe chair or legal can help with that. But I didn't know if you had an idea.
That part of the macro kind of stuff that I was going to get into is, but up and down the street as you look, there's a drain. I mean, I'm happy to entertain it, of course, but there's a drainage ditch that runs the entire length of Belgrade, just about on both sides, that is in the current right-of-way. I know we're not supposed to talk about money here, but it is pertinent at this point if we're talking about funds. I mean, we got a quote for $71,000 to remove those utilities solely in our corner of our property, and we have a piped ditch. There is an exposed ditch that runs on both sides of Belgrade. I can't imagine how much that would be to do that, and if you do go around it, then you have to go. I mean, you're depleting usable acreage on people's properties, and then they're facing the same parking requirement we have. And I know it's not my position to, talk about what county should do in this scenario, because I don't know, but I do know it would be 6 months to. I mean, it would need a whole comprehensive plan to.
That's fine. That
everybody
addressed my
together.
question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Anyone else have a question? Mr. Nelson?
So if I understand this correctly, had the Weeks maintained their business license, they would have kept their certificate of occupancy, and none of this would have been required?
That is correct.
Okay.
Anyone else? Thank you for your testimony, sir.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Do we have anyone else to speak in favor of this application? Do we have anyone else to speak in favor of this application? Do we have anyone to speak in opposition to this application? Do we have anyone to speak in opposition? Very good. This case is closed to the public, and at this time, we'll have a motion to either approve or deny this particular case.
Mr. Chairman, a point of order. Chairman, a point of order. Can we make a motion on 2 very different issues, one being roll-up doors and one being a sidewalk, or does it take 2 motions? I mean, one motion, both issues?
It came to us as one variance request.
That's correct.
So there's one request for 2 different things here?
So the variance is for the sidewalk and incorporated along with the roll-up doors. Am I right, Ms. Working?
But you can make the motion however you want. If you want to separate them, that's fine.
I'd rather keep them together. Let's go with that.
Okay.
I know it might be a little bit more difficult, Mr. Marchant, but I think this is an easy one. So can I get a motion to approve or deny?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion in this case. In the matter of BZA 0423000667, I would make a motion that we approve this request. In doing so, I find that it meets all 7 of the criterion required to show a hardship and grant a variance. I do think there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property, given that the building was intact when the owners took ownership of it, and we are here because the former owner failed to maintain a certificate of occupancy. Weighs pretty heavily, in my opinion, regarding the requests that have been made. For criterion 2, that these conditions do not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. I believe the applicant has done a good job of showing that other properties are in use and would not have to comply with this particular portion of the overlay district or the requirements of this overlay. For criterion 3, that because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to this particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict utilization of the property. I believe that with the roll-up doors, it is appropriate for them to be located on the front of the building, given the constraints with the property lines for the building itself. And for the sidewalk, I am compelled by the argument that the loss of parking spaces would be detrimental to the use of the property, so we meet that criterion. For criterion 4, that the authorization of the variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the zoning district will not be harmed by granting of the variance. We clearly meet that criterion, in my opinion, because the use of this building will not change and is consistent with the surrounding area, and there are no other sidewalks that would tie into this particular property. For criterion 5, the BZA shall not grant a variance, the effect of which would be to allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in the zoning district. We clearly meet that criterion. For criterion 6, the need for the variance is not the result of the applicant's own actions. Again, for this criterion, I'm compelled by the fact that the certificate of occupancy had elapsed on this particular piece of property. And for criterion 7, granting of the variance does not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or the purposes of the ordinance. We certainly meet that criterion, and evidence even presented by the DOT and their inability right now to assist with construction of a sidewalk within their right-of-way is helpful in this matter. So in doing so, I recommend that we include the one special condition recommended by staff. That's my motion.
Second.
All right, y'all said it at the same time. I didn't know I was going to get it from somewhere or the other. Mr. Jordan, I guess. My right ear is stronger, better than my left ear, I guess. All right, any discussion? Any discussion? All right, let's carry it into a vote. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye and raising your right hand. Aye. It looks unanimous. Congratulations, sir. So within 10 business days, you will get information from staff letting you know the next steps. And congratulations.
Greatly appreciate it. Thanks. All right, we'll check on business license next time we buy something.
Might be a smart thing to do. Son, dressed alike. Okay, so our next case is case BZA 0423-00668. And that will be done by Ms. Working as well, I think. No, Mr. Downing.
Okay, BZA case 0423-00668. The applicant and property owner, Christian John Skolin, is requesting a special exception to establish a short-term rental, extended home rental in the low-density R4 zoning district at 1545 Oak Island Drive, TMS number 32803000031 on James Island in Charleston County. The subject property and all the surrounding properties to the north, east, and west are located in the low-density R4 zoning district. The southern portion of the property backs up to the Oak Island Creek. The applicant letter of intent explains, we have invested over $600,000 in the property to make it a wonderful home. We take our pride in the home and will be renting an apartment just 15 minutes away from the property. We will be close and available to maintain the home however needed. Our plan should be granted the extended home rental permit. It is to enjoy the home whenever we can and rent between the allowable 71 to 144 days to help cover the costs and upkeep of the property. So that is the subject property. An aerial view of the subject property, a zoomed in and a zoomed out aerial view of the subject property. Staff did conduct a site visit on May the 9th. That is the single-family residence and the proposed parking. There's also proposed parking within the garage. These are some of the surrounding properties within the area. That is Oak Island Drive. That is the site plan that was submitted by the applicant. And again, it does show parking within the garage. That is the plat that is recorded with the Register of Deeds office. Staff believes that all three of the criteria may have been met for this application. So the Board of Zoning Appeals may approve with conditions, or deny BZA case 04-23-00668, a special exception request to establish a short-term rental, extended home rental in the low-density R4 zoning district at 1540 Oak Island Drive on James Island in Charleston County. TMS number is 328-0300-031. Based on the BZA's finding of fact, unless additional information is deemed necessary to make an informed decision. Please note that the board may modify any of staff's recommendation or conditions below, including but not limited to restricting the number of days that the property can be used as a short-term rental. In the event that the board decides to approve this application, the board should consider the four following recommendations by staff. Prior to the zoning permit's approval, the applicant shall complete the short-term rental property limited site plan review process. The use shall comply with all requirements of Article 6.8. The property shall not be used for more than 144 days in aggregate during any calendar year, and the property owner shall be responsible for ensuring that the tenants comply with the Charleston County noise ordinance. Staff did receive trying to get a number of two. So I have two letters in opposition, but I did receive several phone calls also in opposition to this application. Any questions of staff?
You have a question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do we know if there's any other short-term rental applications in this general vicinity, or at least on the same block?
There in this entire neighborhood, Mr. Neal, I believe that there is one other that did come before this board, and that was, I believe, maybe a year and a half or so ago.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Martin.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Downey, just a clarification. You said you received 2 letters in opposition? But
Two letters in opposition.
But we have about 15 in our packet. Is that correct?
So yes, those were the ones that were scanned.
It's on the slide coming up when we get to
Right.
that section.
I just want to.
We're not there yet.
I just want
Sorry.
to make sure that I'm
Yep.
seeing and hearing the same thing. So.
Yeah, so there are 2 that are on the digital copy, and there are about 15 in the packet.
Mr. Jordan?
So did you just say that there was one applicant prior,
There's one short-term rental in this neighborhood
so it was approved?
that was approved in this neighborhood.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir. There was one that was approved by this board, and there was one last year that had an administrative permit. Now that I'm thinking about it, had an administrative permit, but they did not renew as of this year.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, gentlemen. Is the applicant present? Thank you, Mr. Downing. Thank you so very much. Please come forward and state your name and address, and please tell us why we should approve your application.
Hi there, my name is Carrie Brown, and behind me here is Christian Scowland, my husband, and we're the owners of 1545 Oak Island Drive.
Very good.
We're here this evening requesting your consideration and approval of an extended rental permit for our home. Our home is a 5-bedroom, 5-bathroom house, but it is split up where there are 2 sides to the house, each side having a separate kitchen as well as an additional den or office space, both of which could eventually become bedrooms as well. With that, the limited rental permit that we were already granted works well with the home, but we would like to set it up where the home is permitted to rent, whether we are occupying a portion of the home or not. The current application we submitted is for a 5-bedroom home, and per code we installed a new concrete driveway to provide adequate parking spots for this. This brings me to some of the very warranted issues and concerns that were brought up regarding the request for this permit, and I see a lot of my neighbors back here. As Chris and I read through the comments in opposition, we both agree that if we didn't know anything else, we too might have written in opposition. So particularly in light of, the fatality that occurred at Folly Beach just weeks ago, we understand the concern and the need for safety in our neighborhood, especially for our kids. A bit about us. Chris and I have been in Charleston since 2021 and have loved it. Presently, we live with our 5-year-old daughter between an apartment downtown Charleston and our home on Oak Island. Our daughter attends the Charleston Bilingual Academy and is entering her 3rd year there. Our apartment is less than 20 minutes from Oak Island, so it's easy to get to and from. So aside from our obvious motivations for safety, we also have spent, as Josh mentioned, over $600,000 to renovate this home. We invested in this home for our family's enjoyment, and like our neighbors, we have no desire to rent this to the wrong people. Should we be granted this extended rental permit, we will vet each potential renter to ensure there are not bachelor parties and the like, which we know happens a lot here in Charleston, but rather families looking to enjoy Oak Island and Folly Beach as they should be. In anticipation of this meeting, we put our home on Airbnb about a month ago to see what sort of renters we might attract. Initially, with a 3-night minimum on the house, the only inquiries we received were for bachelor parties and large group parties. When we extended it to a 7-night minimum, we saw a change in the audience, parents and grandparents looking for a vacation home for their families. This is who we'd be seeking for our home with a limited or with this hopeful extended permit. Chris and I do own homes in Long Island and Stone Mountain, Georgia as well. These homes too are fully renovated and very well taken care of. While 80% of the time these homes are empty or enjoyed by our own family, we do short-term rent these homes as well, having gone through the process of obtaining legal rental permits to do so. These homes, too, are in very residential neighborhoods, and so we have a very strong understanding around the need to rent to the right people, to establish quiet hours, and to communicate the expectations of the neighborhood. We thank you for the opportunity to share a bit more about our family and our intentions. We're hopeful that this paints a clearer picture of what we're looking to do with the request of this extended rental permit, because ultimately we want to be wonderful neighbors, and we want to work with everyone to make it a wonderful and peaceful experience for everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if anyone has a, ma'am, if you would, please come back to the podium. Thank you. Let's see if anyone, I'll start off. I don't normally get a chance to start off all the time. Have you seen the letters of opposition?
I have, yes. There it is. Yes, there were, I believe, 21 of 21 letters of opposition.
What are your thoughts about your letters of opposition?
Well, as I shared, as we read through these, we understood where people are coming from. I think short-term renting, particularly the Airbnb experience that a lot of people have had, it creates a lot of fear. and worry with people, with the safety of the neighborhood and what have you. And we get it. We have been operating these other homes for about 10 years. Is that about right? 10 years. And so we understand the fear that comes from that. So yes, we did read those oppositions.
Okay. Let's see if any, all right, I'm going to start with you, Mr. Williams.
How you doing? So two questions. The board asked this question before. Are you going to use any kind of like tracking software or like Airbnb or something different, or how would you track your residents and people staying there?
Sure. In general, we do. We would list them on Airbnb or VRBO. There's also some really great rental companies here. Stay Duvet is one that's here in Charleston that's wonderful. So we would be working with those types of places to find the correct renters. And we do not, there's an option on a lot of these rental sites to do what's called an instant book, where anybody can just plug it in, pay the money, and book it instantly. We do not ever have that on. We learned the lesson 10 years ago or so on that one, where we always speak with our potential tenants first to understand what they're looking for. And this is where we can kind of weed out the bachelor and bachelorette parties and things like that.
My other question was, have you all rented this property out before, or different rooms out before? Have you all lived in this property before?
Sure. We just finished construction. And so I've had my friend there, the dean of my daughter's school, stayed there just for fun to enjoy it. But at this point, we've not rented it out for money to be able to, to begin the process of that.
No, just one at a time.
Those are my questions. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Did I understand you to say you intend to rent at a 7-day minimum?
That's what we always target, is a 7-day minimum, because that's where we get more of the families. Yes.
But is that going to be your requirement that you would adhere to a 7-day minimum as a condition of getting this approved? Would you agree to that?
Can I ask this? Yeah. I just don't want to overspeak. Yes. Yes, we would.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Did you have a question?
I had a question. First, thank you for coming. We appreciate you being here. I was looking at the parking space. Are you going to live in this property for part of the year and rent it out for other parts, or is it what's going to happen with the property?
We will enjoy the property because it's 20 minutes away. We're there all the time. So yes, we will enjoy it often. But when we can rent it within the time period that we're allowed, we'd like to be able to do so when we find the right people.
All right. I'm mindful that many people, when they rent out their houses or their homes, they have areas that are only for the owner. And many places where I live have the garages separated off, locked. They keep their personal gear, fishing equipment and such there. What are your plans?
We will have an owner's area for sure. The house is also split. So right now we were granted a limited rental permit where we can rent the home that way, but have to be present in the home. We will keep things there, but we would certainly allow whoever the tenant is to have free reign of the home.
With that, I was thinking in terms of the parking. There are going to be 7 spots, I think.
There are
2 of them would be inside. My question is whether that's going to be accessible for the renter, or is it going to be your space for your things?
No, we have our own parking that we live downtown if that place would be rented, so we would be parking there.
Well, are you planning to keep personal property in there, or is that space going to be accessible to you?
Got it. The space would be accessible to the tenants.
So you wouldn't be keeping any of your personality in there?
In the garage for parking, no, not in that area. We do have a number of closets in the house itself for that.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Brown, thank you for your testimony. I have a few questions. One is, have you considered limiting the amount of vehicles with any rental?
Interestingly, yes. We were just talking about that maybe we could set a parameter within the tenants themselves that perhaps they're only allowed to have 3 cars or what have you. There is ample room for, is it 5 right now? For 5 cars, which would typically be fine for that.
Okay. And then my second question is, can you just clarify for me and maybe the board, the renting situation with the house? You mentioned like 2 bedrooms are sort of cordoned off from the other 3, but you're intending to rent the entire house at one time. Is that correct?
That would be the intention at this point, yes.
Okay. Okay. And then my third question is, have you considered perhaps a trial that doesn't require our approval? I guess less than 70 days. Is that correct? Am I right on that?
So currently, Mr. Merchant, they do have that permit.
Right. So you have the permit now to rent the residence for less than so many days. Have you considered trying that for a while to see how that might affect your neighbors, hopefully in a positive way, before coming here to perhaps create a situation that might not be so happy and joyful on Oak Island?
I hear you on that one, and I appreciate the feedback. I think from our perspective, we've just finished construction and have the limited, and so thought let's go for it and let's give this a shot. So I do appreciate the feedback, though.
Fair enough. Thank you.
You had a question? Okay.
Hold for discussion.
Okay. My last question for you: how many people can your home sleep per night?
So it's a 5-bedroom home. Every one of them has a king-size bed, and then one has like a little single bunk on top. So I guess 2 people, maybe in one of the rooms, 3 people.
But when you list it, there's always a maximum people.
Oh, yeah, is it 12? We list it as 12 as the maximum.
Okay. Anyone else have a question for? Yes, sir.
Can the groups be separate, disparate groups, one from, say, North Carolina and one from Georgia? Or
No,
is it
we would just choose single families. I mean, what we've seen in the other homes is typically it's like a mom, a dad, a grandparent, and a nanny, or that with a couple kids or what have you. And that's like that's our dream customer. That's who we want in this house, because we want to be able to enjoy this and have it be a beautiful place that we come back to too. So we really try to limit that to those types of clientele.
intergenerational?
Intergenerational, yes.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. I think that's all the questions. Thank you so very much for your testimony.
Thank you, everyone.
I think, sir, did you want to have an opportunity to speak to this board? Or do we have anyone else to speak in favor?
Yeah, real quick. Hi, thanks for your time. My name's Chris Skelland, Carrie's husband. So just from my
Address,
perspective.
Please. Address, please.
Well, I live at 310 Broad Street, Charleston, and our home is at 1545 Oak Island Drive.
Thank you. Continue.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about, the past is going to be our present if we get this. Over 20 years in this business and hospitality, all of our homes I take a lot of pride in. They were always family first. Speaking of generational, we have one home in Stone Mountain that's going on 7 generations, where Carrie's family delivered all the doctor delivered all the babies in Stone Mountain, starting with the carriage. And now we revamped that home, and our daughter is the 23rd grandchild on my wife's side. So I didn't buy this home to do short Airbnb weekend warrior rentals. This might be our home a year and a half from now. I'm not quite sure. I have a lease at the Jasper, quite expensive, can't get out of it. So we're going to pivot back and forth. But I can assure the board and all the neighbors, whether I'm renting to somebody with our legal limited rental permit or an extended, I check everyone in, I check everyone else out. I have cameras, I monitor everything more than, people want. So if we get this, I'm a hands-on person, and I stand behind all this, and I have a 10-year track record doing it. So thank you for your time.
One moment, please, sir. Let's see if anyone has a question for you. Mr. Williams?
Quick question, just curiosity. How many homes do you all currently have? Do you rent out?
2 homes in Long Island. We have a brownstone in New York City that I'm renting out full time. We have Stone Mountain, Georgia, and this one. So 4.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? You made mention that you're a hands-on owner and that you watch on camera. How do you go about doing that if you have several going on at one time?
I can show you. I can grab my phone and show
No,
you.
no, I don't want to see all
Very
that.
fast. No, it's on an app. You can see everything. I mean, I'm on a.
So it's like the Ring camera that you're using or something to that
It's a
effect?
Vivint competitor. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
had that for 10 years, so I know how to use it very well. I watch everything like a hawk.
So what happens if someone violates some of your rules and they do have a wild party? And they tell you they're doing one thing and they do something else.
Well,
Or they just outright lie to you, you know?
I'll give you an example. I have a client right now spending $65,000 a month for this month in Sag Harbor. The price will be very high, and it's not even about the price. The price will bring in the right clients, and I vet them. I call them, I FaceTime them. If they're local, I will meet them in person. And it's the math is the families with children and grandparents. If it's 5, 6, 7, 8 singles, I want nothing to do with it. This isn't about the money. Would we like a little bit on the side if we're not using it? 100%. But I'm going to continue on the model that's I've proven. And every one of my neighbors, I've had 0 issues. In the beginning when I was young and dumb and didn't have any rules to abide by, but I learned. So I'm not worried about that because I'm in control. No one can rent it unless I say yes. And it's not hitting a button. It's not a bot. Everyone goes through me. So that's why if I was worried about a neighbor complaining, I wouldn't go there. I wouldn't do this. We don't need to do this. I'd like to. So I stand behind it.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Jordan.
So you mentioned that you might be moving yourself down the road?
Well, we may live in this home. I mean, it's a beautiful home.
I thought you mentioned in a couple of years you might be moving yourself.
I might live in this home. I don't know quite yet. So yes.
Okay, well, what I was getting at, if we're moving out of the area, but there's a problem here, how long would it take you to get back to solve the problem?
Apologies.
Physically.
If I move from 310 Broad Street renting at the Jasper, I would be moving to Oak Island.
Okay.
I mean, this might be our home. I'm just not quite sure. You're welcome.
Anyone else? Thank you, sir, for your time and testimony. Do we have anyone else to support this application? To speak in favor of this application? Do we have anyone else to speak in favor? Do we have anyone to speak in opposition to this application? Oh, okay. How about this lady up front with the glasses? You're turning about looking that's up closest to us. We'll start with you first. Please state your name and address for the record and tell us why we should disapprove this application.
My name is Christy Brown, and I live at 2323 Flying Fish Circle, which is around the corner from the suspect property or from the property in question. We've been there for over 10 years now, and Oak Island is a residential neighborhood. We have lots of young families. We actually have a lot of older families that have been there since they were built in the 50s. And we actually have generations of families where parents have, come in and moved in to join their kids. It's really small. It's a single street with a couple of little side roads, but everyone knows one another and everyone gets along, and we have parties and cul-de-sac parties, and everyone knows and enjoys the life that we have. I also am a real estate agent, which makes this odd. I do understand the argument for and against short-term rentals, and I am vehemently opposed to the introduction of another STR in our neighborhood. Mostly because we are a neighborhood and we are not a vacation destination. That is Folly Beach. So this your vacationers, they just don't treat the properties well, and I know that they've stated here that they're going to be monitoring and taking care of everything, but in reality, right next door to me is the other STR. So the one that is approved or has been approved in the past. Difference being there that he actually supposedly lives on the property. He's paying 4% tax rate, and he is a primary resident. But it doesn't stop anything from happening, because over the last, however many years he's been doing this, we've experienced tons of problems. So we have a parking problem. We have, just this morning I took video of 7 cars parked at that house, and only one was in the driveway. The mail lady complains all the time about the parking and the people in the cul-de-sac. Music is playing constantly, all day, every day. Dogs are barking constantly. Intoxicated guests have been trespassing on my property. They come to my door thinking that I am the STR. We find them in the middle of the night, on furniture, under porches, in neighbors' cars. And there just doesn't seem to be, when you contact the owner, there doesn't seem to be any kind of there's nothing done about it. How about that?
Okay.
So it doesn't really stop anything from happening, even though he is a 4% owner. They are not 4% owners, so they're 6%. They are not in what I know Charleston County, but what Charleston City would define as a primary property owner. So
I'm going to stop you at this point because you have gone over your time just a little bit.
I didn't know I would only have 2 minutes when I got here.
I understand. But maybe one of these kind gentlemen can ask you a question and it could help you a little while. Mr. Williams, did you have a question?
Quick question, yeah.
Okay.
You said 4 to 6% owner. Can you clarify that?
correct. So when you pay property taxes as a primary resident, it's 4%. If this is a secondary property that you don't live in, that you rent out, whatnot, that's a vacation property, you pay 6% in the state of South Carolina. So in the city of Charleston, they define a primary resident that can have, or an owner-occupied, I guess is the term you guys use, is owner-occupied, where they use the 4% tax rate as whether that's an owner-occupied, because that is the primary owner and they live in that house. Whereas for here, you just show that you're a voter, that you have a driver's license, and you can get an STR permit. And with where we're located, we are the closest properties to Folly Beach now where you can get an STR, period. So our neighborhood is at very high risk right now because you cannot get an STR permit on Folly. And you cannot get an STR permit in the city of in the city of Charleston without being a 4% resident in that home. So that puts our properties right there. We are the closest ones to the beach that you can get an STR.
All right, Mr. Jordan, you had a question?
How many other STRs are currently in your neighborhood?
Well, and that's another thing, is if we're not enforcing, because I called, my neighbor does not have an actual permit. It's lapsed.
So what's the
So
number?
it
What's the
hasn't
number? How
been-
many in your neighborhood?
So, Mr. Jordan,
The best we can figure out is maybe there's two.
Permitted within the county.
Yep.
Currently,
And-
there are 2 in this neighborhood. The applicant that is before you tonight has a limited home rental permit. There's another applicant who came before this board with an extended home rental permit. And then the young lady who is testifying today is discussing about another young man who had a permit last year, and that permit has since lapsed, and he did not renew as of this year. So currently that property is within violation within the county. So that would be 3 known STRs altogether.
Thank you. And a follow-up question. I believe you mentioned the current STR beside these folks. Is that right?
The current STR is beside me, next to me.
So when that one came up, did you oppose that one too?
I didn't know. And at the time, there weren't really rules around that I would have known about.
So, Mr. Jordan, let me also clarify. The STR that is next to hers did not have to come before the board or have to come before a public process, because he is what we consider to have an administrative permit that does not have to go through any public process.
Yes, sir, Mr. Marchant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if this is a question for the young lady or for Mr. Downey, so I'm going to ask it, and then maybe one of them can answer it for me. I apologize. So in the case of her neighbor, your neighbor, who clearly is violating a few of the rules with parking and other
And not
unfortunate
having a permit, but yet
activities.
still renting on the websites and
Right.
still packing up this morning.
So my question is, have there been complaints filed, like formal complaints filed? And my second question, and you could probably answer that one. You can, go ahead.
Oh, I filed a complaint, yes.
Okay, thank you.
That complaint was filed on Friday.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So first complaint on Friday. And then the second question is, if this person is in violation, I assume they'll get some sort of disciplinary action, correct?
Yes, sir. So a letter will be sent to that person probably tomorrow. I did not have time preparing for the meeting tonight, but probably tomorrow.
Thank you. So the point is that the process by which we allow these things to happen is there's also a process for complaints and for those that don't follow the rules. And to some degree, we have to exercise a level of confidence and appreciation in the applicants to do the right thing. So I think that's just a fair thing to understand, and that good citizens that obey the law should not be punished for those that don't.
And we definitely communicate with the homeowner, and we assume that people do what they're supposed to do and get their permits. So when I called about this and I was on the phone, I said, well, can you tell me, is my neighbor up to date? And of course, he wasn't. So.
Does anyone else have a question? Thank you so very much for your testimony today. Do we have anyone else to speak in opposition? Yes, ma'am. I guess, ladies and gentlemen of this audience, you see that our staff here is on point at all times. So if there's anything that might go awry in this county, trust us, we're in good hands.
Hi, I'm Patricia Ramasiati. I live at 1574 Oak Island Drive, just down the road from the home in question. And as you can see, many of my fellow neighbors will speak to the hardship that this rental will cause. So I want to speak to the fact that you said this was a fact-finding meeting. And I feel that in their application, there are several what could be, at best, disingenuous, misleading falsehoods, and at worst, blatant lies. The first one, they told you here, I heard them say that their home is a 5-bedroom rental. That's in their application. Their Airbnb listed as a 7-bedroom rental. 5 doesn't equal 7, and you asked them to clarify it, and they repeated that it was 5. They're currently renting the home as a 7-bedroom rental.
Would you present that to Ms. Stiles, please?
The homeowner here said to you tonight that he doesn't care about the money, that this is not about the money. In their application, they say to you that they put $600,000 into this and that they would like to rent it to offset the cost of maintaining the property. So which is it? Do they need the money, or is this a hobby as they're trying to present themselves to you as today? Several times in their application, they say this is our family residence and we're seeking other families to occasionally short-term rent, which they discussed today. I think you can all agree with me that if a home is listed on Airbnb, you can try your best to vet these families, but how exactly do you go through that process when it's just on Airbnb? I would ask that maybe this could be a home that could be rented through a management company if you're going to, if you're going to allow them to have the permit. But Airbnb, how can you do that? And they also list in their application the one other home on our island that has the EHR, the one that you discussed that came up a year and a half ago. Keep in mind that Oak Island has about 80 houses on it. And of those 80 houses, we're talking about 3 that aren't full-time homeowner occupied. So that gives you a picture of what type of neighborhood we live in. The one home that has the EHR permit is a completely different situation in that they are an elderly couple who live in half the home full-time. They actually do need the income, and they are there full-time. So by that nature, it does not become a party home, because I don't know anybody who wants to rent out a home to party at when you have the elderly people just on the other side of the wall. So given that I feel that they are falsely representing themselves to you today, I hope that you will look at their application with a little bit more critical eyes.
Okay, thank you. Hold one moment. Mr. Jordan, you had a question, sir.
I've got your thing here where it says 7-bedroom, but I thought I heard them say 12 guests, but this does too, says 12 guests.
This is true, yeah.
So either way, they're saying 12 guests. There might be a difference in the amount of bedrooms, but it's still the same amount of people.
So, Mr. Jordan, to clarify also from the county perspective, the number of parking spaces that is needed for the application is based on the number of bedrooms. In the applicant's application that is found in your packet on page 24, they have 5 bedrooms, which would trigger them to have 7 parking spaces. So if they were to say that they were going to provide 7 bedrooms, they would have needed a total of 9 parking spaces.
But my point is they're not being deceptive on how many guests.
Not the guests, but the number of bedrooms per the number of parking spaces that is needed from the county would be a discrepancy of
if that were to be true.
Make a point about the 7 parking spaces. I mean, perhaps it's not my business because I'm not the homeowner next door, but they achieved the so-called 7 parking spaces by widening their driveway. And from what I understand, the widening of their driveway encroaches on the property line of the neighbor. And when the neighbor approached them about it, their response was, oh, there's a buffer zone. So if said neighbor decides to pursue this, there goes their 7 parking spaces because the driveway might not be in compliance.
Okay. Anyone else have a question? Thank you so very much for your testimony. Do we have anyone else to speak in opposition? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Over here. Striped shirt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Staff. This is real hard for me.
Would you please state your
I'm
name and
sorry,
address?
yes.
That's okay.
Lawrence Gerard, 1541 Oak Island Drive. We're the northeast side neighbors, and we have a good relationship with them, okay? My wife, and Casey, they communicate as they were doing construction. Susan would tell, oh, your pool pump just broke or whatever. So we have a good rapport, and this is hard, okay? But it's business.
Just please make sure your comments are
Yes,
toward us.
Okay, so I'm on the northeast side. I have 5 grandchildren that come down a lot. 4 of them live in Lexington, and 1 we take care of after school. And during the summer, she's 6. We ride our bicycles up and down the street as everyone else does. And what scares me is that 7 cars, sure, but I invited 4 of my guests. 4 buddies to come hang out with me for the day at the pool, stuff like that. So to me, that 7's going to grow. And how do you police that? Okay, especially when I have 5 grandchildren from 11 to 5 playing in the street. That's my biggest concern. The only other thing is if we're flushing toilets there, we're all on septics, okay? And that Oak Island Creek is narrow. It's a tidal creek, but I'm concerned about the sewage problem, okay? Which I think is definitely a need to fix. Maybe you guys can put us a pipe down through there. All right, my wife and I, we moved here 13 years ago from the upstate. She's retired, I'm semi-retired, and be honest with you, if I wake up at midnight and there's one heck of a party going on, I'm not calling you, I'm calling the law, and I'll do it every time until everybody's sick of it. Because it's the safety of my grandchildren and my family is my main concern, and then, of course, the septic stuff. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay. One moment. Mr. Jordan has a question for you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Regarding the ones that are already there, has your grandchildren or the sewer problem come up yet?
As my what?
The other ones that have set this up, has your grandkids had any problem with them?
With my grandchildren, with their child?
No, with their being in existence.
I'm not sure I understand the question, sir.
How many of these short terms are already there?
1.5 from what I'm picking up.
Have you had problems with them?
I'm on the way other end of the street, sir. But yes.
That's a yes or no question.
This lady right here, we can hear parties going on from our house, and I'm probably, 6 houses down? And yeah, and you can, and I've called on them before, just, hey, and I don't call 911, I call the regular number, and they come and they check, they get with them, but it continues.
But also my second part was the sewer issue that you brought up. Have y'all had that problem yet with the one existing?
It's not a 12 person. Yes, sir. Does DHEC come and check our creek? I know they check creeks, and we've had sewer problems coming over the Crosby Bridge on that side of Oak Island Creek, which would be the western side, I guess. That has been closed to oyster fishing because of bacterial stuff.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Does anyone else have a question of this person? Thank you so very much for your testimony, sir. Do we have anyone else to speak in opposition? Yes, sir. You kind of put your hand up relatively quickly, sir. Please state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Hayward Davis. I live at 2321 Swordfish Circle. And I want to compliment these folks for picking out a great piece of property. However, I have pieces of property too, and I understand exactly what I think is happening here. So I had 2 sales for my property, my lot, which I'd be glad to show you, the drawing of Oak Island Drive. So I think it's important that you realize where these folks are. I don't know who I hand this to. This is Oak Island Drive. One way to get into the neighborhood, one way to get out. You have to drive by all these houses, and these are all cul-de-sacs, there's 9 of them, to get all the way back here, which you don't even see on the drawing where their house is located. Okay? So far, we put up 6 months of containers, cars parked all over the street, you couldn't even get down it. Cars parked all over the streets, you couldn't even get around the things half the time. People parked up in the doggone house, the driveway. But let's get realistic, folks. You got a house in the 2 houses in the Hamptons. You got one at 310 Broad Street. Those folks told me they were personally going to move in. They couldn't wait to move in. They're not moving in. They're doing what we would do with the rental sometimes. You know, let's say we move on in, get the neighbors happy, and then boom, we're gone. The trash situation on that street, the street narrows down to the end. We've got a trash for 12 people. Okay, supposedly. I think it's going to be more like 16, but I can't say. I'm ready for Mr. Jordan's question. Septic's going to be an issue because it's an issue in every house on Oak Island. Y'all can't change that, but that's just the way it is. I don't think the septic, anything's been done with the septic over there, so I don't know how we're going to handle 12 people because I haven't seen any septic things going on. Owner-occupied short-term rentals. Can't say because it hadn't happened yet, Mr. Jordan, but I promise you they won't spend 30 days in or near that house over the next 365 days because they've already got people living in it. If you go online and look at what they're actually saying, and I'll be quick and done with it, they're showing this thing as possibly, let's see here. Let's see. Okay. So it's owner-occupied for $1,420 a day. Now, bought the house for $1.79 million, which is $1 million more than anybody should have bought the house for. What they put into it's their own business. But they'll never get their money back unless they do it at $1,420 a day. People are already living in it when it's not even supposed to have been approved yet. But I'm going to end with what y'all said. The purpose of the application for a short-term rental, and you'll have to forgive me because my phone won't turn sideways. The county's committed to working with neighbors. The county has concerns about permits for short-term rentals, to increase traffic, yes, noise, yes, trash, and adverse possible safety, yes, parking needs, yes, and possible adverse effects. And that's what we're going to exactly have in that situation. I don't know these folks. They seem like good people. Told me they were moving in when they brought their boat down there. Oh, by the way, you can rent the boat from them for extra money. So I guess you have to have a South Carolina permit for that. Time's up. Got it.
One moment. Thank you.
Questions?
Yep. Does anyone have any questions of this young man?
I know Mr. Jordan does. No, Mr. Jordan, I've done my job then. Very good.
Thank you so very much for your
Thank you.
testimony.
Y'all have a blessed day.
Yes, sir.
And good luck. That's beautiful stuff.
Do we have anyone else to speak in opposition? Yes, sir.
I was going to ask something, but you might talk too fast.
Please state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
My name is Collick Carson. I live at 1552 Oak Island Drive, which is across the street and one house up from this property. We're 5 houses from the end of the dead-end street. We bought the house 10 years ago. My wife and I have lived there full-time
Please
since
restart the clock.
2019. And we also have 2 grandsons that come to visit. One of the things that we did when we chose our house was we wanted a quiet neighborhood, both noise and activity. And being close to the end of the dead-end street, we got that. I was upset with this, with the idea that it was 5 bedrooms. Now I understand that it's not 5 bedrooms, it's an apartment house. That's concerning. The sewer situation is concerning. But I think one thing that is important, the chairman at the beginning of this said that you all can't do anything about covenants that are in deeds. Well, then my question is, if he's required to have a business license, then he's in violation of the covenants. Our covenants state clearly that no business can take place on the lot. So, and I think with the rest of my neighbors, that if he continues and does get a permit, then we will probably take him to court for being in violation of the covenants. Thank you very much.
One moment, please, sir. Thank you for your testimony. Do we have?
I got a question for staff regarding what he just said.
Oh, okay, I'm going to give you a shot at that.
That's correct, what he said about the business license, and how does that apply to the one already there?
So maybe Mr. Bell can also help me. What would happen in that case is we would have to get a copy of the restrictive covenants Staff would have to look over it. If it is approved tonight, we would have to get a copy of the restrictive covenants. Myself, along with the planning director, would look over with the county's attorneys and to determine whether it specifically states that short-term rentals are not allowed in the restrictive covenants. The problem that we've run into is how short-term rentals are defined. In portions of our ordinance, it defines it as a residential use. Mm-hmm. There are other parts, obviously, where it has to get a business license. So if their restrictive covenant says something along the lines of there are no activities with business license allowed in the neighborhood at all, that might be something that we have to vet with the county's attorney.
Thank you.
Do you want to introduce that for the record to this body, sir?
I don't have all the pages, but I'd be happy to drop one by the office or email you one.
Well, what do you, okay. Mr. Dowie, if you would accept that.
So, the very first paragraph.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, what did we just accept into evidence? So I'm clear on what it was.
I
Is
would
it the
assume,
full
I would assume
covenant?
that it's the covenants for that HOA.
So yeah, this is the covenants for the HOA, and it has the deed restrictions. Again, we would have to look this over again with the county attorneys and the planning director. If the application is approved tonight, we would have to look that over to determine exactly what the restrictive covenant says. That way that the county is not in violation. And then that way if it is appealed to this board, we have the proper evidence prior to it being appealed to this board.
Okay. Mr. Jordan?
So if that's the case, should we wait for you to make that determination before we take this vote on this issue?
If the applicant were to ask for a deferral, then that is something that could be vetted during the deferral process.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, he stepped out anyway. Do we have anyone else to speak in opposition? Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Jordan, for your question. Please state your name and address for the record and tell us why we should.
Catherine Anatoline. I live at 1548 Oak Island Drive.
One more time, a little louder, if you didn't mind.
Anatoline. I live at 1548 Oak Island Drive, directly across from 1545.
The last name was mumbled.
Toline.
Toline?
Yeah. Toline.
Yes, thank you.
So first, thank you for the opportunity to comment on the special exception request for 1545 Oak Island Drive. I request that the county not approve the request to change the zoning from 72 to 144 days for 3 reasons: neighborhood safety and atmosphere, violation of neighborhood business covenants, and septic system performance and capacity. Oak Island neighborhood is composed of family homes, many with small children, and quiet residential setting. Expanding the short-term vacation rental in this neighborhood will not only disrupt the neighborhood, but will increase safety risks. Residents in the neighborhood live here specifically for the quiet atmosphere of a family-oriented safe haven for our children and pets. Unlike someone visiting for a week or less, we are invested in this area, pay attention to our driving, hold each other accountable, to be neighborly and considerate of each other. The state of the traffic and safety in roads in nearby Folly Beach and Folly Road itself is a good example of the dangers of those who are not considerate of local residents. Recent vehicular homicide on Folly is a testament to that. Based on the website, it appears that the renters or others can rent a large boat at the residence. To this end, property is now operating as a boat rental business. We're not zoned for that, and it's our neighborhood covenant that you cannot operate a business out of your property. And finally, in terms of septic, it's great. Septic, from an environmental and legal standpoint, these homes are on septic and must comply with SC DHEC code. These waste systems are not designed to allow for more than you'd have in a single-family home. This single-family home is now serving as maybe a 3 or 4 family home. To our knowledge, the septic system was not modified to address the larger number of occupants using the system. It's irresponsible to permit this zoning change without confirming whether or not the system is in compliance with DHEC law, which states that tanks should be sufficient to serve dwellings of 4 bedrooms or less. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, just one moment. Do we have anyone that has a question for Ms. Tony?
I had a question.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Are street legal golf carts used in your neighborhood or in the community in general to go to Folly Beach, or are they permitted?
We don't really have many in the neighborhood that I've seen.
No, sir. No, sir. You can't. Sorry.
Oh.
Just for you.
I haven't seen them. I don't know there are street legal. I've seen golf carts in our neighborhood, but I don't know what's street legal and what's not. I'm not an expert on what's a street legal golf cart.
Where I live, we see a lot of trailers bringing in golf carts, street legal golf carts, and then guests, short-term rentals, use them while they're there. And I was thinking about that in terms of safety and also for congestion and parking.
We bike.
Okay.
I mean, it's like people are skateboarding, biking, we e-bike, but most of us, are walk. I mean, we're a pretty low traffic neighborhood right now. We try very hard to do that. People are pretty compliant that way, but mostly it's if you went down there on a evening like tonight, and you went down that neighborhood, you'd see, I don't know, they just paved the road. So everybody's out on skateboards, rollerblades, bikes. It's a neighborhood of kids. It's a lot of kids, and they're all really small. And I don't have kids, but I love having them around. And there definitely be a safety issue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you so very much for your testimony. Did we have anyone else say something totally different? No? All right. Well, anyone else to speak in opposition? Anyone else to speak in opposition? So you have the right of rebuttal, and at this time you can address those concerns. You're limited to 2 minutes.
First off, so the STR, the business license, if that's something I knew that I needed, I wouldn't have been wasting anyone's time, including yours. So if that's true, I'm not aware of that. I was real clear. Should I even try this? Do I need anything else? So if that's the case, I'm fine with holding off and finding out if that's what we need to be legit, if you will. That is fine. The 7-bedroom home, I've never been on Airbnb before. In this area is Airbnb. So what I have online is 100% a test. It's a beta test. I wanted to see what I would get. I found out real quick. Weekend warriors, people coming in. Also, with my limited permit, I can split the home. If I want to go 7 bedrooms, I already have a bid to put in a larger septic tank. But for right now, it's a 5-bedroom, 5-bathroom home. And if I get this permit, that's how I will rent it. Or with my limited permit, that's what I will do currently. But am I looking at making it a 7-bedroom in the future? I know I'll need more parking and a larger septic. I already went through the septic, haven't done it yet, but that's future pacing. My boat, I keep it at Ripley Light Marina. I use it. Whether or not I rent that out, I don't know. It's a good marketing ploy to get eyeballs on the home, and I wanted to see what was out there. Nothing has been rented on the boat, and I may not do that. I mean, it's my boat. And I do have friends staying. My friend's home on Johns Island got flooded. There's 3 people living in the home currently, and they are my friends. It has nothing to do with any of this, which I believe I'm allowed to do. Thank you.
Please, sir. Mr. Nelson has a question for you.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for you. I appreciate the time. This has been one of the more interesting extended home rentals we've heard. So on your application, you did put that you would be willing to limit the number of days, or you wanted to rent it out 30 to 60 days. Are you still of that mindset that you would be willing to limit it to no more than 60 days out of the year that you would rent it out?
I'm willing to work with anyone in here. I mean, ultimately, I love the home. I love going out to the home. I've had construction, and now we have Kaya's school just ended. I plan on using the home a lot. But if I get the right family in there for rent, would I do it if I'm allowed to? Sure. I'm going to probably rent the home with us living in it as well at some point. But yes, Yes, this truly, whatever, this isn't about the money. If I don't rent a day of this home, we're going to keep the home. And if we're not living in there full time, we're not living in there full time. Either way, we are fine. This would be a topping on the cake. So
Okay.
yes, I would.
And then a follow-up question on the septic tank in particular. Is it sized for 5 bedrooms? I think you just mentioned that you had a quote to get it upsized or rebuilt for 7 bedrooms.
So as far as I know, I bought the home as a 5-bedroom, 5-bathroom. And I've been told, now this is from a septic company, that if I were putting in a new 5-bedroom, 5-bathroom home, I may need to enlarge it, but this is grandfathered in. But you know what? I'm not an expert. I bought the home it was listed as a 5-bedroom, 5-bathroom. I believe that's this 4-bathroom. Oh, it was 4-bathroom. We did put in another bathroom, legal permit for it. We pulled it. We passed. So I believe we're 100% fine for a 5-bedroom home right now.
Okay.
Everything that I know.
Okay. That's all that I had.
Mr. Jordan?
So based on what you just said, are you asking this to be deferred tonight?
I'm sorry?
Based on what you said, are you asking this be deferred tonight?
No, I'm not. But what I threw me for a loop was one of the comments on this is I would need a business license to operate a limit to get. If I get a extended rental permit, it's illegal, and I'm going to be taken to court because I'm running a business. Well, listen, I don't want to go to court. I'm not trying any of that. So no, I would rather. But if that's going to be a concern, sure. But I don't know the
You heard him say
legalities.
they were going to research it with the county attorney.
I'm taking a lot in here. So yes, but I heard someone say, should we be deferring this to figure that out? So I'm not quite sure.
Staff should answer that. I don't know.
Okay, not yet. I don't know.
So that would be up to the applicant if he decides to defer. He would have to ask the board to defer. If he does not wish to defer, then this is the board's decision to either approve with conditions, or deny the case.
Mr. Downey, just to clarify that, and maybe our attorney can chime in as well, but if we were to approve and the covenants that the neighborhood has says, our attorney staff determines that this business license restrictions would prevent the operation of a short-term rental there, then our variance would be null and void by the declaration of that.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Then I don't see a point in deferring.
Mr. Williams?
Concerning this, to my understanding, there's already another short-term rental out there in that neighborhood, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and how long they been there? Have they been there?
The one I know came before this board about 1.5 years ago.
And it's still
and
active
it's still,
and legit?
Still active and operating, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's my question for staff.
Anyone else? All right, thank you so very much. for your
Mr.
time.
Chairman, apologies. And I want to follow up on the previous question about,
One moment, sir, come on back up.
well, this is not for the applicant,
Oh,
so
okay.
he can sit down.
Okay, so hold
Kinda-
on. Hold on. So at this time, it's closed to discussion. Go ahead.
I just have a procedural question, which is, I mean, obviously we could approve this, and then it could go back to the county, and they could determine that the business license issue becomes a problem with the covenants, and it goes away. We could also defer this pending an approval, and then we could vote on it another time. It's kind of 6 of one, half times the other. Is that fair to say, legal counsel?
As Mr. Downey stated, I believe the BZA rules are that unless the applicant is asking for deferral, then this body is allowed to either approve of conditions, or deny. And so without him asking, you guys would have to make a decision on one of those 3 options.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I'm ready to make a motion, and I'll follow up if I get a second on discussion, if I may.
Well, at this time, that's where we are.
All right, Mr. Chair, I move to deny case BZA 0423000668 based on I don't believe it is compatible with the existing use and does not meet the approval criteria of number 2. If I get a second, I'm happy to follow up.
We have a motion to deny. Do we have a second?
I'd second.
Okay. We have a motion that's been properly moved and second. All right.
May I follow up? Or do I need to? That's fine.
No, you made the motion and you have a second.
I'm sorry.
No.
I think he can explain his position now, so we could have discussion as a board.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, with all the dissent in the neighborhood, I'm not really comparing it to the first short-term rental. I'm looking at it just on this property. There seems to be a lot of confusion and issues with this property, but the main thing is the quality of life and it's just not compatible in that neighborhood. I don't see any mechanism for the county to monitor the applicant to say there's going to be good families in there or bad families or bachelorette parties versus not having bachelorette parties. The issue of the deed restriction, let the county officers do their work. If the attorney says it's not good, it's not good. I don't need a deferral for that tonight. Let's just move forward with however it is. If my motion doesn't pass, then it doesn't pass. But I think it clearly does not meet the criteria for approval of item 2.
So item 2 says about adequate setbacks.
Oh, I'm sorry, my eyes. It's
So you meant item 1, criteria 1.
yes, sir. My apology.
So restate that,
Compatible
please.
with existing uses in the vicinity and with non-adversarial affect the general welfare or character of the immediate community.
So does your second still stand? Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I'd like to say, for the point of discussion, a couple of things have come up in this particular case that are abnormal. They're new arguments that we haven't heard in the past, and primarily is the argument related to whether or not a business license is required and how that applies to neighborhood covenants and restrictions. And I've had the same issue come up in the neighborhood in which I live that has a similar restriction in their covenants, and it has called into question whether or not someone has a home-based business, if that would also be considered business occurring in their house, and is that a violation of the restricted covenants? So I think there's a bit more of a larger question related to the business license itself that there's no way that we could solve at this particular level. But I do think in this case, and what we've seen in most instances with short-term rentals, is a lot of apprehension from neighborhoods to have these placed in their communities. And I wish that our county council would take this up as opposed to continuing to push this back to the BZA level. But that being said, in this particular case, I would be inclined to approve this particular use if we limited the days to 60 days and we limited the number of bedrooms to 5 until the septic tank issue could be fixed or resolved. That's just my particular position on this one.
Any other comments? Concerns?
Chairman.
Mr. Marchant?
I too am struggling with this one because I like to put faith in humanity and that we're not out to hurt our neighbors on one side or another. And in a lot of our cases in the past, we've had these similar cases with one opposition making many of the similar arguments we've heard tonight, but maybe from just one or two parties as opposed to 20 in this case. And this board really hasn't had an issue with it. I think the big difference for me is the number of folks here opposing, which is compelling for item 1, as you pointed out, Mr. Neal. But again, I'm struggling with this a little bit just because I like to think that it wouldn't add traffic, because if a family was living there, they'd be driving, right? And it wouldn't add noise, because if you have the right tenants, they're going to be great users of the facility. I mean, I use VRBO and every time I travel, and my family's pretty quiet, and we don't make a lot of noise, and we don't generate a lot of trash, all these kind of things. So I'm struggling with it, but and I say that in terms of all of these short-term rentals that we deal with as a board, and I certainly agree with you in terms of council taking this up at a closer and further date.
And Mr. Marchant, if I could add, and maybe the board doesn't, and maybe staff can correct me if I'm wrong here, but if we deny this application, the owner of the property is still considered an owner-occupied property. They do have their extended or short-term, whichever level, 72-day permit, and they would still be allowed to rent half of the house for 72 days out of the year. So it can still be rented.
Which is exactly why I asked the question earlier. Why not do that to test the case for the neighbors and the real, and then you come back at a later time to apply for the extended short-term rental because it's proven in concept. So,
But I would think we have an opportunity to limit it even further because they've asked for this. So there's a way to implement a special condition that would further limit their nights they could actually rent it out.
true. Thank you.
Mr. Neal?
Yeah, and Mr. Marchants gave me the idea of when he mentioned that they could still do this without the extended. So that's why I'm not totally against this applicant on doing short-term rentals. It's just I think we should walk before we run, and I think we should see what's going on. And then we have all learned from this experience tonight, and that if we deny the extended rental now, when they do come back and have the extended rental application after whatever time period, or ask for a waiver of it, or whatever the rules are on that, then we can put the conditions on it now. There's just a lot going on with this one, but that's why I made the motion for denial. We'll see where it goes.
Mr. Chairman, to that point, that's a 12-month wait. Is that correct, Mr. Downey?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions on my left? All right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This morning. I'm not clear that an STR request or extended short-term rental, whether the process of having to look at covenants that govern neighborhoods where these take place, it would seem that if that were true and their covenants, and they're filed with the county, so we don't need to rely on what's ever provided by the people here tonight, whether that's checked, and if so, then how did the other one get approved that it's in this neighborhood? It's a process question, basically, I guess.
So to answer your question, Mr. Seidel, all permits throughout the county have to sign a restrictive covenants affidavit. In signing the restrictive covenants affidavit and in the process of going over the application, all of the applicants, whether it be a site plan review case, whether it be them putting a shed in their property, everyone has to sign that restrictive covenants affidavit. And county staff always says, please make sure that you understand the rules of your neighborhood and application. Once they sign that restrictive covenants affidavit, that tells us in the county that they have researched, and that is the vetting process. So if the application were to be denied by the planning director, we have evidence of them signing an affidavit stating that there was no restrictions or covenants that they were not aware of at the placement of the home, the shed, the short-term rental permit, what have you. And if were to ever come before this board, that would also be a part of the evidence in saying, if the planning director ever was to say, hey, we denied this application because of finding out the restrictive covenants, and the applicant did sign the restrictive covenants affidavit, that's part of why that's in place. So does that answer your question?
Well, if a review of the covenants determined that short-term rentals of this type are not allowed, then would we need to go back and address the
No, so that's something that administratively the planning director can reject their permit. And we've had that situation happen once or twice.
I see.
To where the permit was overturned.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, gentlemen. Breathe it all in. All those in favor of denying this application, please indicate by saying aye and raising your right hand.
Aye.
Aye. 3, 4. Keep your hands up so we can get a count. So that's 4. Oh, 5. Okay. So it carries. I should go through the vote. Any opposed? There's 3. It carries. Unfortunately, tonight, your application was not approved. You'll be getting information from staff letting you know the next steps. Unfortunately, we apologize, but it's not approved. Good night.
What they need to do is use what they have and rent it. And get
What we're going to do, just briefly, we're going to take a 10-minute recess, and we will resume promptly at 7 p.m.
So they actually have more days. They don't need our approval.
Thank you. If they live there, right?
The other thing is, short-term rental is 21 days. So they can still rent it out. Nobody can do it. 30 days. And nobody can do it, but that's required. And the people can stay for it. So here's what you can do. You see people doing. You say, okay, I'm going to sign a 30-day lease with you, and they're only going to stay from June 1st through June 2nd.
And then what they do on the whole homes would do is then they would say, we're satisfied after a week. And we got a backup.
Which is why,
keeps it going.
and I should have advocated my position more clearly. That's when I read here that he said himself, and it's starved. The maximum number of nights, the short term. This is why it's so important to read this stuff. He writes 30 to 60 nights, and then ask him, and he can earn. And so we could have further.
We could have done. We could have cut down.
Yeah. Instead of 72, which he has, we actually could have passed it so that he was only allowed 60.
To be even more limited, right? That's more limited than he has now, right?
Right. That was the road.
So currently he can rent it out.
I wish I understood it.
So now can he rent it out without living there? At 72 days? 72 days?
As long as the county agrees that it meets the definition of being owner
Oh,
occupied.
you occupied.
You know, there's grayness there that the first lady pointed out.
Right.
How you doing?
Nice to see you again, sir.
All right. All right.
I like the thing you say me to walk your point.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. It's 7 p.m. and I'd like to get started back so we can move right along. So our next case that we have is case BZA -04-23-00669. And Mr. Joshua Downing will also take care of this one as well.
So the applicant and property owner, Mr. Cody Cooper, is requesting a special exception to establish a short-term rental extended home rental in the low-density R4 zoning district at 623 Thrasher Thicket Road, TMS number 343-1600015 on James Island in Charleston County. The subject property and all surrounding properties are located in the R4 zoning district. The property contains a single-family residence, which is 625 Thrasher Thicket Road, that was constructed in 2004 per Charleston County records. The property also contains an accessory dwelling unit at 623 Thrasher Thicket Road that was permitted in 2021 per Charleston County records. The applicant would like to rent the accessory dwelling unit. The applicant has shown 6 parking spaces on their site plan, and the applicant's letter explains that I am proposing to change my limited short-term rental permit to an extended permit at my primary residence. So that is a picture of the subject property, an aerial view, a zoomed in aerial view, and a zoomed out aerial view. Staff did conduct a site visit on May the 9th. That is pictures of the accessory dwelling unit and the parking. These are some of the surrounding properties on Thrasher Thicket Road. And that is Thrasher Thicket Road. This is the site plan that was submitted by the applicant. And the plat that was recorded. So staff believes that all 3 of the criteria may have been met for this case. So the Board of Zoning Appeals may approve with conditions, or deny BZA case 04-23-00669, a special exception to establish a short-term rental extended home rental in the low-density R4 zoning district at 623 Thrasher Thicket Road, TMS number 343-1600015 on James Island in Charleston County, based on the BZA's finding of fact, unless an additional information is deemed necessary to make an informed decision. The board may modify any of staff's recommendations below, including but not limited to the restricting of the number of days that the short-term rental property may be used. In the event that the board decides to should approve the application, the board should consider the following recommendations by staff. Prior to the zoning permit's approval, the applicant shall complete the short-term rental limited site plan review process. The use shall comply with all requirements of Article 6.8. The property shall not be used for more than 144 days in aggregate during any calendar year, and the property owner shall be responsible for ensuring that the tenants comply with the Charleston County noise ordinance. Any questions?
Does any board member have a question of staff at this time? Thank you so very much, sir. Is the applicant present? Please come forward, sir, and state your name and address, and please tell us why we should approve your application.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to explain my application and address any concerns from my neighboring residents as well. My name is Cody Cooper. I live at 625 Thrasher Thicket Road. As Josh mentioned, we're renting out 623, which is the guest house on our property. We've been doing this for several years now, and we're just looking to extend it. It is our thought and opinions, especially prior to some of the complaints that we heard, that we have not negatively impacted our community in any way. We do our best to ensure a positive experience for all of our guests at all times on our property, as well as minimizing any negative impact on the community. We've taken several steps in doing so, adding additional garbage and trash, privacy fencing around our property, and working hard to establish some very strict policies with our guests to ensure that they're following any rules that we have in place to prevent them from negatively impacting our neighbors. Some of the other provisions we've taken to adjust the privacy fencing, 6 off-street parking, additional garbage recycling. We have a designed layout in our backyard to direct any activities for our guests to be in our backyard, which is heavily buffered from neighboring from our neighbors by the guest house, our another accessory unit, and our house, with privacy fencing around that, along with heavy landscaping to create a very strong buffer with our guests, aside from one area in our driveway, which is where is really the only exposed area where the parking situation is. It is in our opinion that we have followed all the rules and regulations up until this point, and have followed all the county, James Island, and our community rules to not allow any negative impact on the community whatsoever. After reading some of the complaints that we heard from the residents, which many are the first of my knowledge, we've been doing it for several years, and especially over the past few years, after learning early on from some of the guests that we had early on, that some of the changes that we made, more strict policies, reducing the number of guests that we allow, some of those things, we haven't experienced any problems that we were aware of. Some of the complaints have said otherwise. And part of the issue is, and some context that I want to give with this, the complaints that have come from some of my neighbors have come from a very select group of neighbors that I have, and they fall into a very distinct category of the new houses that were built in our community, all within the past 5 years or so, and they're houses that are retired people without children, and it seems to be that they moved into our community looking for a retirement community, and they've stated that in the complaints that it is a private road with this private community atmosphere. That is not true. We are not on a private road. It is privately maintained by everyone in the community. We all pitch in, and in fact, my neighbor, who is not one of the ones who complained, is the one that does all the maintenance on the road himself anyways. To give him some context on other neighbors on the road, when you pull on to our Thrasher Thicket Road, the first house on the road is a rental, a long-term rental. You have anywhere from young adults who we've had in there that like to party to families and people that aren't there very often at all. The next house on the street is a family with 3 children. Our kids on the street are always riding up and down the street on their bikes. They take that family, they have chickens that they take care of. They also have a short-term rental on their property as well. Then it's a small stretch of 3 homes that have filed complaints for this, a few of which you'll hear from tonight. Then you have our house, and next to me, another family. They have teenagers, older teenagers who are often throwing parties. They're, have a dog that barks all night long. Then the gentleman that lives there, he has a construction company, and oftentimes he's welding and grinding metal in his driveway and making loud noises, and brings in his heavy equipment from his construction company. Next to him is his sister's house. They grew up on this land and lived there for a long time, and they have teenage kids as well. Often have friends. They have about 6 teenagers in that family, with friends coming and going, sometimes driving a little bit aggressively down our street. I've addressed it with them, and they talk to them, and we resolve it ourselves. Haven't had many issues at all. I know that oftentimes my guests or staying might be kind of an easy target for people to blame for those types of things, but we're in a community that is not a retirement community. It's not necessarily the most quaint, quiet neighborhood around us, along with the street directly behind us. So some of the complaints have come from a position where I feel like they are positioning us as a very quiet retirement community, which isn't why my wife and I moved in. We moved in because it's a little bit country. there's families around. It is a little bit noisy, and I have boats that I like to work on and do projects outside, and I like to play basketball with my son in the driveway, and things like that that seem to not be welcomed by newer people in the neighborhood. That being said, I do feel like that's where some of these complaints are coming from, and I don't feel like justifies any reason for us to not be able to continue with our short-term rental or the extension of that.
Okay, thank you so
Alrighty.
very much. Thank you so very much for your testimony. Let's see if any board member, Mr. Neal has a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Real quick, I'm looking at the application. I'm trying to understand, because I don't see pictures of the inside, obviously. It's 2 bedrooms, but you can have up to 10 people?
Yeah, so we actually, our listing actually says 8. We have dropped that back to 8. So the way it's set up, it's a bedroom and a lofted area, multiple bedrooms in a large lofted bedroom area.
But your application says maximum number of guests is 10.
Yes, that's what our short-term rental, our limited, was always, that's what it was initially applied for, and that's what we were granted for our initial application.
So how many beds do you have, if I may follow up? How many beds are in the place?
5.
It's 5 beds, okay.
Yep, and our listing, we actually list it for 8 guests, and our average groups are about 5 to 6 people.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Mr. Nelson? No. Oh, I'm sorry. Seeing things out of the corner of my eyes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cooper, I guess some typical questions we ask, to use Airbnb, VRBO, et cetera. That's one question. And then the other is, with the complaints that we've read in the application, is that due to it sounds like you're suggesting that maybe because of some activities of your other neighbors and not necessarily you, but are there specific issues related to some renting you've already done to date?
No, so yes, I am suggesting that some of it may be due to that, and I'm not here to say that all of that, none of it might be from any of my guests. I don't know. Up until this point, almost all of the complaints that you see that were submitted have never been brought to my attention. So if it was for my guests, I was not given the opportunity to rectify them at that time. Just recently, after the sign was posted in my yard, I did speak to my neighbor directly next to me, and some of the complaints about basketball being played by some people in the driveway and another group, they were all, within regulations within the quiet hours. We have strict quiet hours that we enforce, 9 p.m. during the week and 10 p.m. on the weekends, that our bedroom is the closest thing to the guest house. So we're the first ones to hear any issues. And if there had been, my neighbors know how to contact me. They haven't contacted me and let me know about any of these issues. Just recently, there was one, that conversation that we had after this meeting was proposed. So no, there haven't been anything significant brought to my attention, to answer your question.
And then what platform do you use?
Airbnb.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else has a question? Thank you so very much for your testimony, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Do we have anyone else to speak in favor of this application? Do we have anyone else in favor of this application? Do we have anyone to speak in opposition? Yes, sir. Okay. Yes, sir. I saw his hand first, and you'll be next. Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record, and please tell us why we
Okay.
should deny this application, sir.
1 second. I have some photos.
Oh, okay, if you want to present those to us.
I didn't know how many people are going to be here, so I just bring.
Thank you.
1 second. I just want to make sure this is silent. My name is Paul Ferrari, and I am at 621 Thrasher Thicket. I am probably the neighbor most adversely affected by this. In that first picture, you can see that this is from my screen porch. The dotted line is the property line. I don't appreciate the folksy characterization of the innocence of what it's like. I know that my other neighbor has a construction company. I know that a dog barks. I did buy this prop, and Mr. Cooper referenced this like some of the newer people. I bought my property pretty much the same time he bought his property. And I think it was similar with Mr. Elko, the other person. So this is not like new people coming in to complain. This is, again, same. But I did buy this private property on a private lane with the idea that with single family expectations. When I bought this property, that was a garage. I was in that garage before they closed on it. It was just a raw garage with I wasn't aware that it became a legal rental, a legal apartment. I have not complained. They've been doing it for 4 to 5 years. In my head, like, I want to get along with my neighbors. I want to be friendly with my neighbors. And I am a quiet, respectful person. And the reason why I haven't said anything, I just said to myself, I don't want to get into fights with neighbors. And I figured they got a permit. What am I going to do? They got a permit. What am I going to do? And then you guys sent me the notice saying, if you have any comments, please do. Please come. There have been numerous, this isn't as innocent as just people coming for a couple days. Probably 75% of his occupants are in their 20s, and it's more of a party atmosphere. They have the rental set up like a small resort. Page 2 is the copy of their Airbnb page. It says 8 guests and 2 bedrooms. And on page 3, you can see one of those bedrooms. There's 5 beds in there, or 4 beds in there, 5 people sleeping in one room. I just don't know how this is legal or okay to pack 8 people into a 2-bedroom garage apartment and for it to be okay. I look at this 1-bedroom and I think about, is there any egress problems with having 5 people in 1 bedroom? So there have been numerous noise, partying things over the past, but to just give you 2 examples, and it's always with the higher occupancy. Oh, sorry.
That's quite. Let me see if I can get somebody to help you. Does any board member have a question?
I do.
Mr. Jordan.
Are there any others of these type in your neighborhood?
Any other short-term rentals? I believe there's one at the beginning of the block, and it's for 2 people only.
Have you had any problems with them?
They haven't, because 2 people don't party. 2 people just come and need a bed for the night and a shower.
Thank you.
You have 6, 8 people there, that's a party, and if they're 25-year-olds, it's a party. Could I just give you 2 quick examples? A couple of weeks ago, there was 8 guys staying there. I don't know if it was a bachelor party or whatever. I'm sitting on my back porch just trying to read on a Saturday afternoon. They all roll in from the beach. They started playing 3-on-3 basketball. One guy opens his car door, he's playing his car stereo, and I just didn't have it into me to fight, so I just had to go indoors. And then a couple of weeks after that, there was 8 women, 8 young women having probably a bachelorette party. And yeah, there was on a Thursday night, they're playing cornhole in the backyard, and they're screaming each time they make it in the hole. And then a couple days later, on a Saturday, they all spill out of an Uber at 1:30 in the morning, and they're screaming, drunk. One of them's passed out on the thing, and then I go out there and scream like, "Hey, be quiet!" And one of them screamed at me, "You're an expletive," you're an effing a-hole. And I keep asking myself, why do I have to put up with this? If any of you guys, you all own homes, picture this group rental. This is approximately 40 to 50 feet away from me. Picture if you would want to put up with this. This has been a hardship on me. No other neighbor, like I am right on top of this rental. And Mr. Cooper can say, well, we bought it because that thing was there. But when they bought the house, that was a garage. Nobody asked me, is it okay to put a rental right there next to your property?
Let me see if there's anyone else that has, I didn't mean to cut you off, I apologize, but with due process. Does any other board member have a question? I have to keep it on point, I apologize. You have another question, Mr. Jordan?
Those issues you just brought up, did you ever bring it up to Mr. Cooper and ask for help?
I did have a conversation with him about 2 weeks ago, and he said, I'm sorry, we're trying, we're doing this and doing that. We're telling guests to be quieter. And I told him, I said, I also have a problem with the fact that you have back-to-back-to-back rentals. I said, there'll be 3 or 4 cars in there for 3 days, and then I'll finally give a gasp of relief when they roll down the driveway. But then the cleaning crew comes in an hour later. They're there for an hour, they leave, and then probably an hour and a half after that, there's a new crew of cars in to party for the next few days. And I told him about that, I addressed that. And it's like, why do I have to put up with this back-to-back rentals? Why do I have to put up with all these strangers constantly there? And when they're there for 3 days, their typical rental is only for 3 or 4 days. They're there to party. And they're there, and it's not fair to me.
I assume that this has been going on prior to 2 weeks ago.
And so part of what he said to me, and he's like, don't worry, we're not renting out during the week anymore. We're going to be renting it less. But yet we're here today because he's asking for permission to rent more.
Thank you.
Do you have anyone else with a question? I thank you so very much for your testimony tonight, sir, and hopefully you got all your information out. We tried the best with the time that we have available.
Thanks so much.
Yes, sir. You wanted to speak as well. Please state your name and address.
Yes, my name's Don Alco. I live at 617 Thrasher Thicket. I am 2 doors up from the Coopers.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me make one thing clear, all right? There is nothing personal between and the Coopers. They're my neighbors. We get along, we talk, all right? But I do have a problem with short-term rentals, okay? I'm going to give you, gentlemen, some examples. I'm in my backyard, my wife and I, doing some gardening, or we're laying around the pool, all right? And a renter comes over to me and says, could you ride me downtown? I go, what? Yeah, ride me downtown. I says, well, ask your renter. Well, they're not home. Another occasion comes over. Another renter comes over. Could you call an Uber for me? What do you mean call Uber? My phone doesn't work. My cell phone doesn't work here. I said, ask your renter. Well, they're not home. Another girl comes over. My car's not working. My battery needs jumped. Could you jump my battery? No. Ask your renter. Well, they're not home. See, a lot of this occurs when they're not home, all right? It gets to a point where, he mentioned about basketball games. I'm a retired school teacher. I love children. I'm 77 years old, and I'm not old. I'll hang with anybody, okay? I love children. But I have some concerns, You're trying to relax in a backyard, and they're having a basketball game. And you know what goes on during the basketball game, all right? They're yelling, screaming, etc. All right? The other issue that I have is the roadway. All right? We do, you know, when my wife and I decided to retire, we built our retirement home there. We loved the area. We looked all over James Island, and we said, we found it. It's a dead-end gravel road, quiet and peaceful. All right? Well, it's not like that anymore. You know, Ubers come at all hours. In other words, 10:30 at night, I look outside my window, and there's a car parked out there with the headlights on for 5 minutes. I go walking out, then they take off. All right? Same thing again. During the day, the same thing. People stop. They stop in front of your house, and they look. You walk out, and they drive off. We do have some children that live in a second home, and I'm concerned about their safety because right now we have more people that are speeding. When I shouldn't use the word speeding. They're very aggressive on the gas pedal. All right? When we moved there, my wife and I, we never knew that there was going to be short-term rentals. I never knew this. The second house on the right, which Cody referred to, we were told that was going to be a mother-in-law suite. All right, but they're renting. But I'll be honest with you, they're not a problem. It's older people that rent there, and they don't party. The only problem is you walk up the steps to the top of the garage, and you stand up there and you have no privacy in your backyard. You have no privacy in your backyard. Okay? I mean, I could go on and on.
Yes, sir.
All right? There was letters submitted.
Well, unfortunately, your time has elapsed.
Okay, just let me finish by saying this, all right? Before you people render a decision, consider what was said, all right? Put yourself next to a short-term rental, all right? And I think your philosophy will change on short-term rentals. You know, there's times I wanted to go over and say something to the rentals, but I would have got, hey, old man, get out of here. No, you don't want to say that to me. So I just let it go. I conversed with Paul, and like I said, everything was, you know, nothing was taken care of. So
Thank you.
hey, thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Hold on just one more moment.
Question. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Does anyone have a question?
I'm going to ask one quick question.
Yes, sir, Mr.
Hopefully
Nelson.
it can be a quick answer. Currently he's allowed to rent the house for 72 nights out of the year. Is he renting it for more than that? Because this sounds like you guys have an issue that occurs year round.
It mostly occurs in the summertime.
Okay, if he's renting it more than 72 nights out of the year and he's not following the permit that he has, you do need to address that with the county, with county staff. That's not something that we can rule on here tonight. But the reality is we cannot stop him. This board can't stop him from having a rental in his house right now. He has a legitimate permit per county zoning. If there are specific issues with your neighborhood and you're not wanting extended home rentals or any type of short-term rentals in your neighborhood, that needs to be addressed with county council. But we definitely appreciate your comments tonight.
Just one thing, you know, he mentioned about barriers. If you stand facing his house on the left side, he put up a 6-foot fence. But on my side or Paul's side, there is no barrier. Paul planted some shrubs, but other than that, the noise carries from his right into my yard, which is two doors up. So, you know, but anyway, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
One moment. So you're saying to this board that there's not adequate buffers between his property and the adjoining property?
From my opinion, on the right side, if you stand facing his home, on the right side, there is no fence. On the left side, he put up a 6-foot fence all the ways around for the neighbor on the opposite side.
Okay. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question? Thank you so very much. Do we have anyone else to speak in opposition of this application? Do we have anyone? We didn't clear the room, Zipper. You guys haven't spoken yet. So you have the right of rebuttal, sir. That's limited to 2 minutes.
All right, thank you very much. And
Please
first
state your
off-
name and address again.
Oh, sorry,
And
Cody.
address all questions this way.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cody Cooper, 625 Pasture Thicket Road. First off, I respect my neighbors' opinions and their concerns. One thing to point out, which I think was understood here, is a lot of these concerns I really wish had been brought to my attention so that I could rectify any of these problems prior to today. To touch on a few of those very quickly, the last thing Paul said about, Don said about the fence. I did speak to Paul, my neighbor, during that conversation that we had a couple weeks ago. And I agreed to him to change some language in my listing and to some things that he thought could help on his end. And I also offered at that point to put in the fence. I had talked to him about it in the past, and we discussed it, and I offered to do it, and he said he did not think that it was necessary at that time. However, I've still been planning to install that fence along our property line. About a 20 to 30 foot stretch. And the reason there's not a fence there is because of where it's located on the other side of the driveway. The other fences are on the inside of the driveway, which surround our pool area and backyard. So this would be just a standalone fence, not really enclosing any of the area. Some of the other things that were said, back-to-back rentals. We do not have any back-to-back rentals. To your point, we don't have enough days. We've only been renting this spring, summer, and part of the reason for trying for this extended is not to rent out more days during the week. It's to extend our rental into the fall and winter months a little bit. We do not have any renters that check in within 2 days. We have everything. Most of our rentals are all Thursday to Sunday timing, and we have a buffer in between on every single booking on our books right now. Weekends, like I said, weekends only. There are a few that fall on a Wednesday rather than a Thursday, but the majority are end of the weekend to the weekend. And I believe that addressed most of the concerns that were brought up by them just now. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Yes, sir, Mr. Neal.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, 2 questions. First one about your rental numbers. So if I heard you correctly, you're saying you're only doing it in spring and summer, and your average is 3 nights, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. You're not focusing on the other days. So by the current regulations, if you're given 72 nights, that's basically 25 weeks. So half of the year, you're trying to do it. So now you're going to try, if this gets approved tonight, you're going to try to add or extend it a little bit more, but you're not going to do it during the weekdays. You're just going to do it when people are home on the weekends where your neighbors are home. So I've got a little bit of a problem with giving you more extended time on this. I think it's fine with the short-term rental, but it seems like it's starting to be borderline nuisance to some of your neighbors, possibly. The second question, so I'm wondering if you would put any parameters on how many nights you think you would want to go to. You think you're going to immediately use the 144? That would be my first question. And my second question is, how would you best frame it for us to add better barriers or landscape buffers so that your neighbors are not hearing everything that's going on at nights if this was to be extended? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're not going to jump right into those 144 days right away. I mean, I don't know what that's going to look like. We don't rent out every single weekend, and as we get into the off season, my wife and I, we like to, it's on our property. We like to have some privacy for ourselves as well. We have, we block it off when we have family coming in town. There's times that we don't rent it out in the spring and summer as well. So that's, there's no saying exactly when we would meet those 144 days. I hope that answered your question there. For the buffer, yes, I would be willing to put in a 6-foot privacy fence that goes along that part of the Paul's backyard along our driveway there.
Just following up, declare exactly, I don't know if that's the north boundary, south boundary, just which line would you say exactly that is, so we can have it on record? Which property line?
It would be the property line between 625 and 623.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir. Okay, anyone?
if I could, if in the event that the board decides to limit the number of days, that would run with the permit concurrently. So every year the property is renewed with a permit. Currently, I believe we only have one short-term rental permit that has an extended home rental license that has less than 144 days. And so if we were to limit that number of days, we would need that as a part of the condition, and that would be the number every year going forward. It wouldn't be like 120 this year and then next year 130. I don't know if we could necessarily do that. And then also, if there was to be a condition of adding the buffer, staff would recommend that prior to the permit approval that the fence be installed.
Okay. Well, I tell you, we got a really good staff there, boy. You're not going to get much over on our staff. Yes, sir, Mr. Nelson.
Do you do any 7-night rentals, or are they all usually 2 or 3 day weekend rentals?
So we used to, and to create some of that buffer so we didn't have people there all week long, we actually reduced it to 3 to 4. We don't do any 1 or 2 nights.
Okay.
We have throughout the year, it differs between a 3 or a 4 night minimum.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on this side? Okay. Well, thank you so very much for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. All right. At this time, this closes this case to the public. Any discussion? Any questions for staff? Okay. With that being said, at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve or deny this case BZA 04-23-00669. Do we have a motion?
Approve.
Mr. Williams?
Motion to approve. I make the motion to approve this applicant with a couple of conditions.
We're listening.
Based on the criteria, 1, is compatible with existing uses in the vicinity and will not adversely affect the general welfare or character of the immediate community. It meets that criteria. Number 2, adequate provision is made or exists for such items as setbacks, buffering, to protect the adjacent properties from the possible adverse influence to proposed STRP use. I believe it meets that criteria. Number 3, complies with all applicable rules, regulations, laws, and standards of this ordinance, including but not limited to any use, conditions, zoning district standards, and applicable STRP site plan review requirements of this ordinance. It meets that criteria because it's residential as well, in a residential area. And I move that we include the staff's 4 recommendations and add 1 additional condition, which is to put a 6-foot privacy fence between 625 and 623, as the applicant stated in his testimony.
Prior to
Thrasher
approval?
Thicket Road, prior to approval. Permit approval, prior to permit approval.
621. Yeah,
What is it?
621. It's between actually 623 and 623.
Amended, 621 and 623 Thrasher Thicket Road. That's my motion.
Okay, we've heard a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Downing, you have.
Mr. Ray, I'm not sure if it's proper, but if we could ask Mr. Williams to state the tax map number, that way it's ensured when we are going to the permit approval.
Between TMS number, where is the TMS number?
015, or is it 095 or 067?
Between 095 and 067, TMS number?
No, you listing both of them.
015 and 095.
Either 095 or 067.
If we could ask the public for the
specification of the text.
Do you know
memo.
which side it is?
It's
Could you pull up the map?
It's 9-5.
It's 9-5. Thank you, Mr.
I've got 015 and 095. 015 would be the Coopers and 095 would be Mr. Ferrari's.
Thank
So
you.
it'd be 095.
095, TMS number 095.
Thank you. Okay, gentlemen, we have a motion on the floor to accept with the necessary corrections and additional condition.
I'll second for the sake of discussion.
Oh, okay. So we have one that's been properly moved in second. We have any, well, we got to bring it to a vote first.
Oh, you got
discussion.
discussion, right?
Yep.
Discussion. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Mr. Williams, will you consider limiting the number of days from 144 down to, say, 96?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So I would add that as a condition as well, whenever the time came, if we're done with discussion, when we're done.
Well, you would change it now, and I would agree to the, to the change.
Yes, as a condition added to limit the number of days from 144 to 96 days.
And you approve, you go along with that for your second?
Yep.
Any more? All right, Mr. Neal?
Just for discussion, I mean, I appreciate the motion to change it from 144 to 100. I think, or 96, is that what you said? 96. The way I read the approval for extended rentals is, are we not making an adverse effect on the neighborhood? And we're clearly making an adverse effect on the neighborhood. So I'm going to be consistent, and when it's an adverse effect on the neighborhood, I'm not going to support it. Even though I like the idea of the 144 down to 96, I think these folks are impacted, and I wouldn't want to live there. And it sounds like they don't want to live there. That's why they don't rent it out all the time, and they rent it out only when they're going to be there. So I'm not going to support the motion, but I like the motion.
Additional buffering has any mitigating measures for the impacts that are caused to their neighbors?
Well, I have a fence in my backyard, and I can hear people from behind me. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think a fence does anything that much. I think a fence keeps the dogs out. It keeps your view corridor out, but it doesn't stop sound. And when those bridal parties and bachelorette parties come in at 1 o'clock in the morning from downtown King Street, that's impactful. I wouldn't want it. So I'm going to vote against it.
Mr. Marchant?
Mr. Neal stole my comments, but I too am in opposition to the motion because a fence will not solve noise issues or Uber issues or quality of life issues. It will only impact visual, the visual barrier between the two pieces of property. 25% of the people who live on the street are against this rental. 25%, that's a pretty high. There's 8 houses, there's 2 people that don't like it. I think that's my right math. That's Clemson math, but I think that's right. So, that's a compelling quality of life argument, which we don't often see. So I too am opposed.
Is the Clemson math the compelling argument? Or
Ever back that up?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I think a second or third. The issue is noise. I think what we heard is noise. It's not the ability to see what's going on. It's the noise, and nothing that's been proposed is going to do anything but increase the noise. More days, fence is not going to stop the noise. I oppose this motion.
Anything on my left? Okay.
I call for vote.
Okay. At this time, all those in favor of this motion, please indicate by saying aye and raising your right hand.
Aye.
Ooh.
Oh, you're in favor, right? For it?
That's your motion.
Yeah, aye.
Yes. Aye. So that's 2. All those opposed? Okay. So unfortunately, it's denied.
Mr. Chairman,
Right,
I'd like to make a motion.
It does fail. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, in the case of BZA -04-23-000669, I move that we deny the applicant based on it does not meet criteria 1.
Second.
All right, now we have another motion on the floor that has been properly moved and second to deny this case. All those in favor to deny this case, please indicate by saying aye and raising your right hand.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, so that carries. Where did the gentleman go? Okay. Unfortunately, sir, your application did not pass. You'll be getting information from staff letting you know the next steps in your application. Unfortunately, we apologize for that, but it doesn't pass. So says your peers. All right. The next case that we have is the last case for the night. Is case BZA 04-23-00670. And I believe Ms. Working is doing this particular case.
The applicant and property owner, Mary Jane Brown, represented by Baron T. Brown, Baron, is requesting a special exception for the placement of a manufactured housing unit in the low-density residential R4 zoning district at 557 Fleming Road, which is TMS number 34001000010 on James Island in Charleston County. Adjacent properties to the north and east are located in the low-density residential R4 zoning district. Adjacent properties to the south and west are located in the city of Charleston's jurisdiction. The subject property is approximately 2.92 acres. The applicant's letter of intent explains the request and quotes, installation of a new manufactured home measuring 44 by 28, which is 1,232 square feet. Utilities will be public. Some clearing will be needed for the placement of the home, and no grand oaks will be impacted, end quote. This is the zoning ordinance requirements. This is the radius map, and the big circle is the radius, but you could see there's three circles. One is around 170, which is adjacent to the subject property, and one is around 79, which is adjacent. And those two properties have a mobile home, manufactured home, as well as 29, which is across the street. Then we have the aerials. We did our site visit on May 9th, 2000. Site plan and plat. So we analyzed the properties within 300 feet of the parcel proposed for manufactured home replacement on April 6, 2023, and determined that of the 41 parcels within the 300-foot subject area, there were 29 existing residences, 25 were site-built homes, and 3 were manufactured homes, and 1 multifamily home duplex. There are 12 vacant parcels within the 300-foot area. Based on these findings, the manufactured home ratio for the subject area is 10.7%, and it has to be 25% to be approved administratively. So we stated that the request meets all 6 criteria, and the board may approve of conditions or deny the request. The one condition is just the manufactured home shall comply with section 6424B of the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations Ordinance. Questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
What was the percentage again, the maximum percentage, and what was the, could you repeat that?
Their percent was 10.7, and that's a comparison between single family and mobile homes.
Right.
And it has to be 25% for staff to approve it. If it's less than that, then it comes to y'all. So, and a lot of times what is happening lately is that areas are changing and there's more development, so there's more single family.
Anyone else have a question for Ms. Working?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. This may be too technical. Manufactured home and modular home, 2 different things?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so the manufactured home is on wheels, I guess, it's owned like a car. And the modular homes are like single family homes, but they're built on site. Like they take the parts and build it on site.
Not too dissimilar than what one might find on Fleming Woods Road. Although they're probably stick built, but they're pretty tight.
Right. Yeah, the manufactured homes will have the sticker, and I mean we could do research on permitting to find what's what.
Anyone else? Thank you, Ms. Working. The applicant, please would come forward. Please state your name and address for the record, and please tell us why we should approve your application, sir.
My name is Baron Brown. I live at 710 Diana Drive in Thomasville, North Carolina, 27360. The property in question has been in my family, the Grant family, for over 100 years. This is heirs property. If we were able to build a permanent site or house on a property, we would, but being that it's heirs property, the only thing we can do is put a modular or a manufactured house on the property. My mother, they live in New York right now. My mother and my father, they're both retired now. My father just had an 80th birthday. They've lived in Charleston all of their life, as far as from childhood to adulthood, and then before moving to New York. But the goal for them was to come back to Charleston and go back to the property was owned by my family for, like I said, over 100 years. That's been their goal, and they're at that stage right now. I wish there were some more people that had the same situation, so I could know where to, go with the questioning and try to make this more appealing as far as you guys wanting to approve it. But my aunt's been on the property for over 15, 20 years now, since she's retired. My aunt has a property, has a mobile home on a property adjacent to it. I can't remember what the number was, but it's right there. And that would be all the sisters would be back together on the property. So I'm just hoping that you guys will approve it. My father is, like I said, he's 80 years old. He's on dialysis. And they just want to come home. And that's the skinny.
All right, thank you. I'm going to start with Mr. Marchant, and then we'll come to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brown, thank you for your testimony. Could you help educate me a little bit on heirs property use? I was not aware that there's a limited use for residential.
With the heirs property, you can't build on the site unless you get approval from everyone in the family. As people are getting, or like my parents are getting older, it's separating, it's getting wider, and the heirs are getting more. So where it's just geared to fail, and it gets sold, and that's where it ends up happening, because someone thinks, and the family thinks, oh well, it's my heirs' property, it's my property also. So but my aunt's been paying the taxes on the property for over 20 years, 15 years, and it's just the three sisters that are paying the taxes: my aunt, my mother, and my other aunt.
So the mobile home gives flexibility to the multiple heirs that claim the property. In the event they wanted to sell it, there's no structure attached
Exactly.
to it. That's essentially the logic behind it. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just quick question, and this staff might need to follow up on it, but are there any other plans for any other manufactured homes to go on this property? And is there another manufactured home currently on the property? And then for staff, if they'll follow up, is there a limit based on this size or zoning to the number of units that can be on this property?
So On any property in Charleston County, you can only have two.
Okay.
So whether it's two manufactured homes together or one manufactured home and one stick-built. In R4, there's not a size requirement anymore.
Okay.
But I think it's a single-family house. I don't know if we had to get a picture of that.
So, yeah, if he may follow, if the applicant could fill in the voids, is there anything on the property now? If there's one, this will be the second and there's no plans for a third or anything like that?
That I don't know. It was always our goal in the family was to, being that it is heirs property, would be able to put more trailers on the property. But as far as I know, just right now, I'm concerned about my parents.
Right.
And being that it is heirs property, that is available for other family members to put mobile homes on the property.
That's
too.
the limit, to have two resident dwellings on one property. Now, they could possibly subdivide and get more, but the problem then is that it has to go to probate.
Right. Yeah. Right. That answers me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Anyone else? Thank you so very much for your testimony, sir.
You're welcome.
Did your mother have any aunt? Excuse me.
It's okay. My name is Carolyn Grant Logan. I live at 557 Fleming Road, and that's the home that's been on the property all these years. It's a house. I live in it. I came from New York, retired 2005, and I came on the property, and that's where I live. So I have this sister, which is his mom. She's ready to come back to Charleston to live, and she's hoping that she'll be able to put a mobile on the property. Since my nephew said it's heirs property, so we can't build. Because nobody owns any certain part of it. It's heirs property, belongs to everyone. So the only thing you can do is put mobile on it. So that's what she's trying to do. So we hope that you will grant us, my sister and my brother-in-law, the opportunity to come back to Charleston and live out the rest of their days. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Mr. Jordan?
Question?
Just out of curiosity, if something happened to her house and it was destroyed, could she rebuild a house, or there had to be a mobile home also?
No.
Just curious.
No. I'm satisfied with this house.
Oh, I understand. I wasn't talking about
It's
your
a family
case. I'm just talking
house.
about
I've
in
had it for
general.
years. We all grew up in it. He grew up in it.
That's a
Brother that was born
that's
there.
not something for this board to consider as far as what can be built because of the heirs property situation.
Well,
that's a different thing for this
No,
board.
but you asked my nephew about the
Hold on, ma'am. Hold on. One moment.
Curious.
We'll get to you.
Good question, though, Mr. Jordan, but that is not for this board or staff to consider what can be rebuilt there. There's a layer of situations there. In this current zoning district, they are allowed to build single-family residence. There's another issue outside of just planning and zoning.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Let's do this. Anyone else? I see there's no one else. Thank you so very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
I see there's no one else in the audience, so I'm not going to ask for anybody in opposition. So,
And I would just add that we did get 3 letters of support in the packet, and then we did have 2 letters of opposition in your supplemental packet.
with that being said, at this time, I'll close this to the public. And I need a motion to approve or deny this particular case.
Motion to approve the case.
Okay, Mr. Williams?
I make the motion to approve this case 00670, ending in 00670. It is consistent with the recommendations contained in the Charleston County Comprehensive Plan, residential. It is compatible with existing uses in the vicinity. It will not adversely affect the general welfare. We had other letters of support. Adequate provisions is made for such items as setbacks, buffering, to protect the adjacent properties from the possible adverse influence of the proposed use, such as noise, vibration, dust, glare, odor, traffic congestion, similar factors, as we heard. There's no opposition to this, and there was support from another party. Where applicable, will be developed in a way that will preserve and incorporate any important natural features. As we heard, it's going to be a manufactured home there. Complies with all applicable rules, regulations, laws, and standards of this ordinance, including not limited to any use conditions, zoning district standards, or site plan review requirements of this ordinance. I believe it meets that criteria. Criteria number 6, regular traffic and pedestrian movement on adjacent roads shall not be hindered or endangered. I believe it meets that criteria. And the condition recommended by the staff. I would like to add that condition.
All right, we have a motion that's motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Which one?
That's Neil. Whatever. Okay. Thank you. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye and raising your right hand.
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous. So congratulations. Within 10 days, staff will be sending you information about your next steps. So we do thank you for your time today.
What was the
Ms. Working?
opposition?
Are there any administrative?
Yes.
Besides our next meeting this month.
We're, if you recall, we're having the special meeting on June 26th at 5 o'clock. There were a potential to have 6, but we have 3, and that's all we're going to have for the amortization for these short-term rentals on Edisto Island. And it will be a different format, but we'll work through it. It'll be fine.
Abbreviated format, I'm understanding.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then I'm still working on the cases for July. It could be up to 10. It just depends. I'm going through them, and there's stuff missing, so I can't schedule them until they're complete.
So you were saying this is the special one on the 26th?
Yes.
Do you know how long that estimate time? Just
Mark, how long do you think it would take to go through that? We haven't done this yet. The amortization.
Any donations?
And at this point, it's very difficult to determine. I can imagine it being very similar to tonight's meeting, depending on the neighbor's application and just general comments about the application, but that's all I can really speak to at this time.
Yeah.
When you say amortization, what do you mean by that in terms of short-term rentals?
We got,
There was a lawsuit, I think, that involved these properties that were short-term rentals before the ordinance passed, but then now they wouldn't be allowed. So this is giving them an opportunity to ask you for continuance of the amortization. So some people are, like, one of the applicants is going to ask for 5 years. One is going to ask indefinitely. I'm not sure about the other one, but there's, and then they have to, like, prove that they recoup the cost. So you won't be going through criteria. It will just be their answering those questions on their applications, and if you think there's a good enough reason to extend it, and if so, how long. So.
These are beach properties, I guess.
Yeah, or near the beach. I don't know if they're on, because Colleton County's got the beach.
Is
But
it on our schedule?
yes, 26. Yeah. And then July 10th is the second Monday, so it'll be a little bit spread out, at least. And then just a reminder and training. So if anyone has questions or about that, just email me.
Okay. Well, I want to say that, this board is getting stronger and stronger, and I appreciate everybody's comments and the deliberation that we're having. It's healthy and it's good, and please make sure you're representing the people that elected you. So a lot of great work, gentlemen, a lot of great work. And to our staff here, I tell you guys are just knocking it out the ballpark. I just thought I had to kind of restrain that young man over there, boy. He was just getting it done tonight. So thank you all for all the hard work and dedication you do. Nice work. All right. So, and thank you for being a master of your craft. Not anybody would tell you that, but you know your stuff. This meeting's adjourned.
He never has. I've told him a couple of times.